Good morning, good morning, good morning. All right. Happy Tuesday. All right. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me set up this tech for us. Elvin's music playing in the background right now. Let me see here. Let me pull this together. All right, looks good, looks good. All right. 2 main videos today. Themed stream. Love these. We're going to tackle some topics today, girls. Misandry, matriarchies, your mother, all of it, all the good stuff, okay? And then I'm going to get back to editing this week's pod because it's coming up just perfectly together. It's honestly going to take me so long to finish because it's just, you know when it's a good one? It's a good one. It's just every detail. All right, so I'm going to pause Elvin's music. 1, 2, 3, big pause. Okay. Now. Have you guys seen this content creator named Breaking Down Patriarchy? I've been meaning to show her on stream. I've been watching a few of her videos here and there, and I've really been enjoying her. This video came out a couple months ago, and the title is funny. The title is What If There's No Such Thing? But what she's talking about is matriarchies. The thumbnail said the word matriarchies. And then she titled it. So it's a little confusing because you might be like, well, what's the thing? What thing? But she's utilizing the thumbnail and title together. So I want to start with her video because I think that would be good. And then I started to watch this by myself the other day, but I actually wanted to stop and watch it on stream with you guys, called the Misandry Paradox. This is Waving the Red Flag. They are, I don't know their content very intimately. They did a collab with Syphysis. They've done a collab with FT Signifier. They feel like I think they're progressives, but I think they're like liberal progressive. I'm not sure, but I thought it might be a good way to have the conversation. Often I find, we talked about this on the Discord recently, the best kinds of questions to get are people who are just starting out because, they offer you the best opportunity to explain your ideas thoroughly and to explain how we got here. It's different when people are coming in bad faith or when people are kind of like way past the 101. The difficulty with people past the 101 is they're asking questions that, kind of leave people behind. But if you can start from a basic question, like, are men and women equal? You can start to have like larger conversations. The dilemma also with starting off with a basic question like, are men and women equal, is that, when I look at myself, in this viewfinder and I see myself, I don't see myself as a woman. And this is a new thing for my brain where as I get older and as I move into my elder years, I see myself more and more as just, I don't know, almost like non-binary or gender neutral even. Like, I don't even know what the word is. It's like, I don't know. I don't see woman in that the way I used to, I suppose. And a big part of that is because, the irony of the conservatives deciding what a woman is excludes me from being a part of it. If a woman is supposed to be feminine, if a woman is supposed to have babies, if a woman is supposed to be these things and I am not those things, then I definitely am not a woman, right? But obviously we know that's not how it works because if you break down gender stereotypes and expectations, we know women, doesn't mean you have to have babies, right? So I think there's something to be said about, like, again, who are we having the conversation with? What language are we using to communicate to those people? And then which language do we use in the comfort of our own homes? Because I also know that when I'm in the comfort of my own home and it's a safe space, I use very specific language that sounds very gendered, but is not in the way people mean. So, when I tell my partner, like, I'm having a man day today, or my partner says like, oh my gosh, you're like such a lesbian today. Like, this isn't just something we're saying for funsies. There's like an embodiment of the energy that like, oh, this is where you're at today, And that might feel reductive to some people who hear it, but for us, it's quite progressive or liberated in a sense, because it liberates us from having a construct that lesbian is women who love women. Instead, it's an embodiment of the energy. And again, these concepts we're just at such different stages, all of us, of where we are in this conversation. So it'll be good to, I think, have it today and talk about what it means, right? Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And chat says agender, genderqueer. I don't know, girls. I'm on this deconstruction journey myself, so who knows where I'll end up. But all I know is, I don't know. Chat said, what about gender nonconformist? I don't know what label. I feel like, instead of I feel like the reality is gender fluid is probably the most apt label, but it's like being plant-based or vegan. Depending, if I'm talking to my conservative family, I say I'm vegan. If I'm talking to vegans, I say I'm plant-based. These words only mean something because words mean different things in different bubbles. Does that kind of make sense? So the words are not permanent. They're contextual based off of the construct. So in this progressive construct on my channel, I guess I would say that I'm gender fluid. I think is the most apt word, I think, for this bubble. But if I was talking to a different bubble, I'd probably say something else. But because, you know what I'm saying? It will all make sense. Okay, let's go ahead and ask ourselves, what if there's no such thing as matriarchies? Let's see how we feel about this.
Lately, I have seen a lot of people very worried that women are starting to take over and dominate society, forming a matriarchy that oppresses men. These claims are...
Okay, first of all, it says this is the future that liberals want. Okay, first of all, let's be real. Assuming this is all consensual, this is the future everybody wants, okay? First of all, the amount of conservatives at the dungeon, the amount of Trump voters at the dungeon, don't even get me started. Okay, MAGA loves this. Don't even get me started.
These claims are demonstrably false. I'm sorry, but it is just silly to claim that women are taking over leadership because we have had one female vice president chosen by a male president and are...
Wait, I saw a TikTok that said this guy was saying so if a trans woman got elected president, would you say the first female president was so and so? And then people from other countries where they've had multiple, women presidents were like, no, we'd say it was our third female president. And I'm like, oh! America's so stupid. America's like, oh, we don't even have one, girl. Okay, relax.
Lineup of presidents looks like this. And our list of richest people looks like this. And our religious leaders look like this.
Oh, brother, bro.
Be serious. Are you honestly arguing that women have more power than men? If so, you are just proving the saying that for those accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression.
True.
But just for fun, let's say women did somehow overcome thousands of years of patriarchal law and culture and started leading the world in government, business, religion, family life, law, the arts, the sciences, everywhere where men have historically held the power. Some people think that this would be a good idea.
Men start wars and the entire planet should be a matriarchy.
And some people claim that we could create a matriarchal society by copying all of the matriarchal societies that existed anciently and still exist in various places all over the world. So let's highlight all of those amazing matriarchies. Here are a few. In this video, I'm going to claim that 1, humans have never instituted a true matriarchy, and 2, we shouldn't claim that they have. I realize that this is a very controversial take, and if you want to try to prove me wrong, I welcome respectful debate.
Is it a controversial take? I feel like it's, I don't know if that feels controversial.
In the comments. So pay attention and tell me if I convince you, and if not, tell me.
I mean, maybe it's controversial to a misogynist who thinks women are controlling his life.
Why? My first claim is there has never been a true matriarchy. As I always say, you shouldn't even start a conversation until you've agreed upon the definition of the words you're using. And that's especially important here. The word matriarchy comes from the Latin matri, meaning mother, and the Greek arche, meaning to rule. So a matriarchy would be a culture wherein the mothers, or women more broadly, have a birthright to rule over men. If the United States had developed within a matriarchal cultural context, our presidential portraits would look like this.
Wait a second.
Our presidential portraits would look like this.
Wait a second. All right, let's see here. Yeah. Yep. Well, you know.
In a matriarchy, women might choose to abdicate their right to rule. They may choose to share their power with men if they wanted to. But their right to rule would be theirs to keep.
Wait, Chad says I live in a matriarchy because my mom tells me to shower. A misogynist, probably dead.
Not based on merit, but because they were winning.
Wait, what does that say? Damn it. Hold
Based
on.
on merit, but because they were winning.
Two men passed the roles of domestics and housekeepers, but mother, why can't I go rocket cadet school like you did? Oh, go to rocket cadet school like you did because you're a man, Greg. That's why. Damn, bro. Bars.
This is not to be confused with matrilineal, which is the practice of tracing descent through the mother's line. The Jewish tradition, for example, is matrilineal, but no one would argue that the Jewish tradition in general is matriarchal.
And who has the right as master of the house to have the final word at home?
Matriarchy.
Okay, first of all, if you have not seen Fiddler on the Roof, you have not lived. We got to do a Discord watch event. If you have not seen Fiddler on the Roof, you have not lived your life. You have not lived.
Is also not to be confused with matrilocality, which is where a married heterosexual couple moves in with or near the wife's parents. In the US, we're not particularly patrilocal or matrilocal, but this is a big deal in some countries. You may have heard of strongly patrilocal cultures where a new wife moves into the home of her husband and has to prove herself to his family. Whoever gets to stay in the community where they were raised is greatly advantaged. Matriarchy is also not the same as matrifocality, which is a culture focused on or centered on the mother. There are some prehistoric cultures that left behind a great deal of art depicting very fertile women, leading anthropologists to guess that these cultures were matrifocal. Also, this should be obvious, but a country ruled by a woman is not automatically a matriarchy. England has sometimes been ruled by very powerful queens, but only because there wasn't a man available to be the king. Mexico currently has a female president, but she's the first female president.
Ooh, you just wait. I have my podcast for next week. Highlights. She was recently sexually assaulted in public. It was disgusting. And my podcast next time, so not this one today, but 2 weeks from now, is going to cover that just a little bit in one of the sections.
And she's only president because Mexico just barely overcame its patriarchal culture for the first time in history and elected her despite the fact that she's a woman, not because she's a woman. So if you ever hear the term matriarchy, dig a little deeper. If it's a culture where identity or even inheritance is traced through women, that means it's matrilineal. If it's a culture where a new husband goes to live with his bride's family, that's matrilocal. If the culture worships goddesses and seems to really respect women, particularly the power of life-giving, that's matrifocal. And if it's a culture that happens to have a female leader, ask if she's the leader because of her gender or in spite of it. A matriarchal culture would be one where the government, including their lawmakers, and their religions were run by women. And women largely determined the social norms, including reproduction practices and who could marry whom, and the arts and sciences, and how history was transmitted, and so on. Now, an argument I hear often is that
Hold on, just so that said, matriarchy equals women holding birthright power in government, religion, law, commerce, social norms, arts, sciences, and historical records.
Now, an argument I hear often is that matriarchy isn't the opposite of patriarchy. When women are in power, they share that power with men. Okay, to that I say, a culture where women are in power and they choose to share that power with men would be called a benevolent matriarchy. So show me a culture where women truly hold that power as a birthright, which they can choose to bestow upon men. And
Okay, so let's just talk about that word birthright. It's a very interesting concept. It's used in many different legal senses, but just think about it as a social construct. The idea that because you were born, there's a right you are given. Now, philosophical speaking, I think we're all, you could say we have a birthright to freedom, right? Like we're born free, but the reality is we're born within systems and constructs. We're born to somebody. Somebody didn't just have us, they had us within the construct of their reality. So the word, like the concept of a birthright, like, how Trump is trying to get rid of birthright citizenship? He's trying to take away a right that is given to you simply by being born. Okay, so think about that in relation to gender. The idea that because you are born gender, you automatically get this right, this ability, right?
Take away from men if they chose. Whenever I have this conversation, the person claiming that a culture is matriarchal will usually backtrack and say, okay, well, it's just that women balance out the men's power, so they have equal influence. And to that, I say, that is awesome. I love that. And a culture like that has a name. It's called an egalitarian culture, or Riane Eisler would call it a partnership culture, as opposed to a dominator culture. But I do not believe that we should be calling egalitarian cultures matriarchies. And here's why. Number one, because it's factually not true. And whenever people claim that a word means something that it doesn't, it just muddies the water and makes really important issues impossible to talk about.
Pause. Words are defined by constructs and bubbles, and they are culturally different everywhere. So just FYI, this argument is true, and I agree with it that words matter and how we define them matters. Pause. And they are subject to change based off of bubble. And they are subject to change based off bubble. We cannot keep believing like we're too grown to keep saying, well, words mean the same thing universally. Girl, there's 8 billion people on this planet. Words do not mean things universally. Come on now.
Number two, I believe that calling a culture a matriarchy that isn't one can fool people into believing things are better than they are. For example, I was once in a town in rural Southeast Asia, and a local man was going on and on about how his culture was a matriarchy because they believed in goddesses, and according to him, husbands had to do what their wives told them to do. So I asked him, okay, wow, that's awesome. Do you have female presidents? Oh, no, never had one. Female judges and legislators and members of Congress making the laws? Female spiritual leaders? Unfortunately, also no. Then later that day, we were at a school, and I asked the principal of the school why there were so many more boys than girls in the middle school. And he said it was because the girls dropped out of school to do housework and fieldwork and get married and have babies starting in 6th grade. Men telling women that this culture was matriarchal was a way to placate them so that they didn't ask hard questions. Number three, I don't like using the word matriarchy, especially as a societal goal, because it's a lightning rod. Robert Downey Jr. aside, when men hear that women want to institute a matriarchy, what they hear is women want to rule over men. And that's what they should think, because that's what the word means. It takes so much extra energy and time to explain, like, no, women don't abuse power like men do. Women use their power to lift everyone. I'm sorry, maybe I'm extra sensitive to that reasoning because I come from a religion where men say the flip side of this all the time. Trust us to share the power. You have such a special, important role as a woman. We'll protect and provide for you and preside over you benevolently. The same way I reject men's birthright status over women, I reject women's birthright status over men. And of course, men are going to reject that too. And then we lose potential allies in the fight for gender equity.
Okay, well, hold on. Let's pause there. So first, I would say that anyone who wants to take advantage of you will use any excuse or ability to do so. They will use the name of God. They will use the name of their gender. They will use anything at their disposal to abuse you. So first and foremost, we have to recognize that, again, I feel like it's slightly reductive to be like men and women equal. I don't want to make men and women equal. I want to eradicate the concept that we should even be having this conversation. Like, this conversation is all bigotry conversation. We should not be having conversations about whether men and women are equal or black and white is equal or so-and-so is equal. They just are. We're all born the same. Let's stop talking about it. Next. Because again, this conversation about like, well, are they equal? They are. Next. We're wasting so much time talking about when they are. And so the issue is like, you have to deconstruct, like people have to deconstruct this idea that we need to prove we're equal. We are equal. We are just as valuable. Everyone is just as valuable. It doesn't matter what your gender is or what body you come into the world in. Like, none of this matters, which is ironic since, you know, in Catholicism, which I was raised in, they say souls don't have genders. And yet the soul is what matters. The body doesn't. And yet everything about the Catholic Church is patriarchal. If the soul is genderless, why isn't the Pope? Don't fuck with me today, bros.
Okay, with all of that said, you may have heard of cultures that you are convinced are matriarchies. So with this new vocabulary in mind, let's check out 4 cultures from around the world and see what we think. The Minangkabau people are the largest ethnic group on the island of Sumatra, Indonesia. They are matrilineal, tracing descent and inheritance through the female line. And traditionally, a married couple stays in the house of the wife's maternal relatives, while the husband is considered a guest who visits his wife at night. So, matrilocal. However, while the Minangkabau are the largest matrilineal and matrilocal society in the world, with property, family name, and land passing down from mother to daughter, religious and political affairs are run by men. Peggy Reeves Sunday, an anthropologist who lived among the Minangkabau people, observed, the Minangkabau are known in Indonesia for their literary flair, business acumen, and egalitarian democratic relationships.
And the fashion is on point.
Between men and women. Neither sex rules because males and females complement each other. So, is that a patriarchy, a matriarchy, or an egalitarian society? Next, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy of the East Coast of North America. Among the Haudenosaunee peoples, the men are the chiefs. The Grand Council, made up of 50 chiefs, makes decisions following the principles set forth in the Great Law of Peace. But the clan mothers play a major role in selecting the chiefs, and they can depose them anytime they wish. Women also preside over agriculture, making important decisions about land and food distribution.
Okay, pause. Let's just talk about something we talked about a little bit on stream yesterday. If you see these kinds of videos and have a yearning for community, you have to understand the work it goes into holding, like maintaining these communities, and also how there's a structure. You see how there's a structure to the community? The way community thrives is everybody knows their place. So if you have a rebellious bone in your body, you're probably not going to do the best in community. That's the problem with community. It requires conformity. So the question is, what are you willing to conform to maintain community? Okay, this is really difficult. I know this as somebody who has different communities she belongs to. It requires a level of conformity. Think about that. But once you have it, and once it's somewhat cohesive, now there's a hierarchy to the standard, right? People have a role to play. Maybe it's based off age or gender, but think about it. Okay, because again, this like fantasy of like, I just want to be authentically myself and I want to do everything myself works 100%. I think I live that life too, but not when I'm engaging with community. I am not 100% myself ever when I am engaging with community, because it's not just about me anymore, is it? Only when I am in my house alone is it 100% about Brittany. Otherwise, like, there has to be a compromise with community. And it's very, you know, it's something to think about.
And they are a matrilineal society, meaning that lineage, clan membership, and property rights are traced through the maternal line. This means that a child inherits their clan membership, their name, and their societal status from their mother, not their father. So is that a patriarchy, a matriarchy, or an egalitarian society?
And great point, Chessa. So there are still gender roles, but they are different than Western white gender roles. Exactly. So there are still gender roles. And I'm saying I'm over gender roles. But yeah, I think that's a great thing to point out, chat. I personally am like, I'm not interested in gender roles at all. But okay.
Next, the Mosuo of China. Near a beautiful lake in the foothills of the Himalayas live the Mosuo people, whose society is often called the Kingdom of Women. They practice what they call walking marriages. After a coming-of-age ceremony, Mosuo females choose their own partner. During this partnership,
even the concept of coming of age, I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I get it. I'm here for it to an extent. I understand, you know what I mean? Like the concept, but usually coming of age cultures, they do it under 18, right? Like, is it 18? Is it 20? Is it 16? Is it 12? Is it when you get your period? Like, when do you get to come of age? You know, in some cultures, you're a woman if you have your period. So we need to talk about, like, what age are we talking about here?
The man visits the woman's home upon invitation, leaving the next morning to return to his own home, so matrilocal. When babies are born, they're raised in the female's family, with the father visiting whenever he wants to. But the mother's brothers and uncles bear fatherly responsibility. Men and women bring up the kids equally. Also, in the Mosuo culture, women are unambiguously the heads of their households, and they make decisions about family resources. Inheritance is matrilineal, meaning that wealth and property are passed to the mother upon death, giving Mosuo women authority and freedom. Women are not dependent on men for income. So if a partnership is not working out, men and women are both free to move on. With that said, men still wield political power in wider society. Is that a patriarchy, a matriarchy, or an egalitarian society? Last, the Bribri of Costa Rica. And if anybody's going to prove my thesis wrong, it's going to be these people. The Bribri's societal structure is organized in clans, and like other cultures we've mentioned, their clan system is matrilineal. So children's clans are determined by the clan that their mother belongs to. Also, women are the guardians of wisdom and spirit.
I guess there's no gay couples here. So if everything is through the mother's lineage, then what do you do when you have gay couples or non-binary couples?
Spiritual traditions. They are the only ones who can inherit land and prepare the sacred cacao drink that is essential for their rituals. And the sacred cacao tree itself is said to have been a woman. Women,
Like, okay, I'm going to say this in the most respectful way possible. All of our parents are just cosplayers, yes? Do we agree that every culture around the world is just cosplaying? Like the way that girls on Tumblr want to be witches with peace and love. I respect you. But also, like, that's what you all are doing. You're all just playing pretend and being like, this is the way it is. I'm here for it, girl. Okay, give me a costume and a fire and I'm here for it. But also, like, you know, it's made up. We're making it all up. Like, that's the thing. I know it sounds disrespectful because when people say, like, this is my tradition, I hear you. I value that you have maintained this tradition for generations. But you are basically hosting a Comic-Con every year, every day, every whatever. You know, I just feel like I get it. I hear you. But also, there is no actual reason we're doing this, except we've decided to keep it going, which is beautiful. But why are we doing that? That's why I'm like, I love a tradition, but also I love to break a tradition.
and also assign boys and men their roles in the community. For example, women will choose a man to be the awa, or shaman, and only men can be shamans. Sibu is the primary deity, and he's a father god, the creator of earth and humanity, the god of wisdom, values, and indigenous customs. But again, the women get to assign the men and boys their roles in the community. So is that a patriarchy, a matriarchy, or an egalitarian society? As we wrap up, what are some practical takeaways? Whether or not prehistoric cultures really were matriarchies, whether or not there are indigenous cultures that were or still are egalitarian or even lean matriarchal, what is the best, most just way for us to organize our society? And how do we get there? Let's look at some data. Nick Kristof has been a Pulitzer Prize finalist 7 times for his coverage of human rights abuses the world over for the past 40 years. In the book, Half the Sky, he, along with his wife, Cheryl Wu Dunn, write about the features of a thriving society. They write, in general, the best clue to a nation's growth and development potential is the status and role of women. Women's empowerment helps raise economic productivity and reduce infant mortality. It contributes to improved health and nutrition. It increases the chances of education for the next generation. When women gain a voice in society, there's evidence of less violence. When women gain control over spending, less family money is devoted to instant gratification and more for education and starting small businesses. It's no accident that the countries that have enjoyed an economic takeoff have been those that educated girls. You educate a boy, and you're educating an individual. You educate a girl, and you're educating a village. It seems that when women gain wealth, wisdom, and resources, they really do tend to share them with everyone, which does kind of confirm the point that I addressed earlier. So,
hear that, Afghanistan? Get your shit together, losers. Man, Afghanistan being like women can't even talk to each other because the sound of a voice, sound of women like even talking or singing is too much. Get your shit together, you fucking losers. Jesus Christ, grow up. And all these fucking Christians and all these fucking modern day patriarchal religious people, all of you at your worst are exactly like these men. You are not special. If you had it your way, some of the Christians and your great America United States of America would 100% be like, women shouldn't talk, bro. Hell, there are whole Catholic nunneries that take a vow of silence, bro. Let's be so for real.
Men who are afraid of women forming a matriarchy really have nothing to worry about. Not only because it's arguably never happened and is a ridiculously long way from happening now, and I don't think it ever will happen, frankly, but also because even if it did, women would not oppress men the way men have oppressed women. But even with all of that said, in my opinion, it's egalitarianism, partnership, and representative democracy for the win. Thanks for watching. As always, your likes, shares, and comments make a huge difference in helping other people find my work. Thank you so much for your support.
Okay, so I really like that video. I'm gonna go ahead and link it, of course. Let's see. Chad says, if you're interested in gender nonconforming identities in indigenous cultures, I would just suggest learning about Two-Spirit people. I think it's the term used in North American indigenous cultures. It is, and they have specifically requested that non-binary people do not use that term unless they are Native themselves. So basically, what's happening even in Native bubbles is they are saying their tradition and their words for their people have nothing to do with anyone who isn't a part of this bubble. Therefore, they're taking like an ownership of this word, which is fine. Do not care. Like, that's your business. But also, then we are not having the same conversation. It means they are not talking about gender nonconforming in a deconstructed way. They're talking about a religious or cultural or traditional construct that they are excluding people from to say that it only belongs to them, which is fine. Not arguing with them. But I'm saying I want to get away from ownership of gender. Okay? I want to get away from ownership of existence. Like, I'm not interested. Okay? Love it. Love that for you. Not interested. And like this idea of like, if your community is trying to get to the most objective truth, then it certainly wouldn't be one that didn't apply to everyone who it applies to. But if you belong to a religion and the religion has rules, or you belong to a culture and the culture has rules, or you belong to a spiritual practice and spiritual practice has rules, then it automatically creates a deviation between who is in it and who isn't it, which is fine. I need you to hear this. It is absolutely fine. But I'm not interested. Right? An anarchist, would you say you're more of an anarchist? No, I am interested in what's true, what's objective, and what is harm reducing. I am interested in figuring out what it really means to be a person and how we can improve the lives of everybody on the planet. I'm more interested in having a good life until I die and making people's life better, right? I'm more interested in asking ourselves, do these gendered constructs really help us in the end? Like we said, like Chad said, right? Right? Like, no, not like a humanist, fun fact, because again, the humanist construct is too limiting to me. Guys, all these words are limiting and helpful, but I actually don't identify as a humanist because I'm not interested in the movement. I'm not interested in your movement. It's too limiting for me. But let me just tell you this. Hold on. Wait, I lost my train of thought. This video, like Chat said, showed us all these different cultures that do things differently still adhere to gender roles. It still adheres to gender roles. So how is this liberation? How is this liberation from gender if women and men still have different roles in the community? Even if the roles are reversed. It doesn't make any sense. But even holding on to this term egalitarian, I get you, I feel you, it's a shorthand, but it's not even the answer. You know what I mean? And I get it. Listen, I'm not here to make a prescription for a reason. Okay? I am not here to, say you should take on a label or not. I'm here to remind you that these labels are only temporary communication tools that naturally will be limiting because they have to be limiting to apply. Like the word vegan, you know what I mean? Like you can't just be a vegan. There's an expectation and requirement to be vegan. Yes? Okay? So that's why, like, that's fine. But it means that, even if you never eat animal products, except once a year you eat honey, you can't be a vegan to some vegans. Fine. Right? But that's what the labels are for. The labels are meant to create like a construct. And I'm saying there should be no limitation to how truth works. And the only reason we need these constructs is to sort of like explain the subjective way we're engaging with these ideas, which is fine. Again, it's fine. I don't care. I don't think it matters too much. I think it only matters depending on what the outcome should be, what you want it to be, right? Hold on. I also got, somebody said, let me see. Chad says, I don't like gender roles either. And even when what you're saying about coming of age, but I'm also thinking about how we talk about being elders and the different roles we play in the community. I think what's interesting to me is how these traditions make sense of reality, though, through culture and what that teaches us about the world. And then you said, I'd like to hear your thoughts. So obviously the construct of an elder is traditional and does come from culture. It is a subjective relationship with the concept of aging. So not all people play an elder role because it is cultural. Most Americans don't engage in elder culture. I find it to be very not American. I don't know very many like maybe Native Americans play into it and maybe like immigrants play into it. But like in my household, as an example, when we would have gatherings, it was a very patriarchal setup. My grandfather would be the head. And let's say my dad and my uncles were talking. Let's say they were fighting or something. Let's say they were arguing. They could be in their 40s and 50s. And if my grandpa said, stop it, they'd be like, because the head of the household has spoken. Okay. And in the culture, your elders, you respect them. Okay. They get labels and titles. You do not talk back to them. You can have a conversation, but you cannot disrespect your elders. You also go out of your way as a younger person to help your elders because they're people who have come before you, who set everything up for you, right? So if your grandma needs help, you help your grandma. Okay. If somebody in the family needs help who's older than you, you help them. Okay. So there is also that aspect of it where you want to deconstruct the patriarchal part. You want to deconstruct some of the aspects, but I very much value being, assuming now the relationship has to be symbiotic, right? The elders also have to help the young. The elders cannot be entitled. Right. So one time I had an uncle who wasn't much older than me. And he was a punk. OK, he was a punk and a lovable punk, but a punk. And you'd have to respect him. OK, I always call him uncle, whatever. But there came a point where I was like, man, you are not acting like the adult in the room. Why should I treat you like one? And my dad basically gave me permission to say, you don't disrespect your uncle. But he's kind of a kid. He is a kid. Like, how am I supposed to treat you like an elder when you're not treating me? You know, you're not having that relationship with me. If you're my elder, give me wisdom. If you're not going to give me wisdom, girl, move over. You know what I'm saying? So obviously, like, I'm all about respecting my elders if they also play the role of the elder. But if you're just some 50-year-old partying it up with like teenagers, you're not my elder, bro. You're just old. That's the issue. Y'all want to be elders, but you want to party like you're 15 again. Girl, you're not an elder. You're old. Okay. You're just old. Okay. An elder has a responsibility and you're supposed to fulfill that responsibility by being available to young people to answer hard questions for them, to guide them in their life from your lived lessons, the lessons you learned in your life. So, you know, you got to pick one or the other. You can't be an elder who goes and parties. It just doesn't make any sense, okay? Not that elders can't party with each other, but you can't be an elder who's partying with kids, okay? Ridiculous. So yeah, when I say like I want to be an elder, I'm saying like I have to earn my spot. And I don't know when that will happen, right? It's subjective. It's not real. It's not like I'm going to get a trophy or some shit or a badge when it happens. It's just going to be obvious, you know? And some people aren't having that experience. I meet 50 and 60-year-olds every day who have no interest in being the elders. They don't want to be seen as old. They don't want to be treated like they're old. Sometimes I find with men who are really fucked up, who date really young women, they're the kind of men who want to be seen as daddy, but not as elder. They want to be seen as the guy who has money, but not the guy who has wisdom. But they do want to be seen as a guy who teaches you, but not the guy who's old. Does that make, like, they don't want to be your teacher, but they want to be the guy who has all the answers. You know, just because you're old does not mean you're an elder. And automatically telling your kids to respect people because they're old is bullshit. But kids should respect their elders. If it is your elder, you should respect them. The disrespect I have seen from young boys, especially teenagers, towards old people and elders in the community is ridiculous. I mean, guys, it's getting out of hand. Your teenage sons are absolutely a mess, okay? They're absolutely a mess. And we got to do something, okay? Old people getting attacked, even teenagers, even mixed groups of teenagers, girls and boys, like attacking in old people. Like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? Like, sweet little grandpas walking down the street, bro. We got to do something, okay? This isn't a joke anymore. All right. So that's that. Let's see. So, let me see. Do we have any? Let me scroll up on chat. Let me see. Let me see. Did I miss anything? How is humanist limiting? Okay, so the way that I would answer this question is first, let's look up what humanist means, right? Like, what do you think it means to be a humanist? Okay, let's see. We could do the AI answer. Here, American Humanist Association. Okay, let me bring that up for y'all. Okay, definition of humanism. Let's go through it. Humanism is a progressive philosophy of life that, without theism or other supernatural beliefs, affirms our ability to be responsible to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. Okay, that sounds pretty nice, right? Humanism is a rational philosophy informed by science, inspired by art, and motivated by compassion. Affirming the dignity of each human being, it supports a maximization of individual liberty and opportunity consonant with social and planetary responsibility. It advocates the extension of participatory democracy and the expansion of the open society, standing for human rights and social justice. Free of supernaturalism, it recognizes human beings as a part of nature and holds that values, be they religious, ethical, social, or political, have their source in human experience and culture. Humanism thus derives the goals of life from the human need and interest rather than from theological or ideological abstractions, and asserts that humanity must take responsibility for its own destiny. Okay. Humanism is a democratic and ethical lifestyle which affirms that human beings have the right and responsibility to give meaning and shape to their own lives. It stands for the building of more humane society through an ethics based on human and other nature values and a spirit of reason and free inquiry through human capabilities. It is not theistic and does not accept supernatural views of reality. Okay, so it has it's fine, theoretically, as fine as any other philosophical construct, right? Right there, it does not accept supernatural views of reality. So it has a limiter, right? That's fine. I am open to the reality of supernatural reality, right? I am not interested in closing myself off to whatever is true. So I'm not interested in subscribing or prescribing a limiting belief to people. So humanism is fine, but it requires a limited belief. It requires you to not believe in the supernatural, which is fine. I don't believe in the supernatural. I want to know if the supernatural, right? So again, there's nothing wrong with being a humanist in the literal sense, but there is something limiting about it, and I just don't have time to be limited. If that makes sense, because like, again, I say I'm an atheist for shorthand, because gun to my head, I'm pretty sure a traditional theistic God doesn't exist, but I wouldn't say that there wouldn't be some sort of a God that would exist within the construct of the nature itself, right? So I think anime does a really good job of depictions of gods is often just something that is part of the natural world, and so it's perceived as like supernatural, but it's not. You know, it's just actually a part of the natural world, the biological experience, right? So again, Chet says, would you consider yourself more agnostic than atheist? Agnostic in most of the bubbles I engage with seems to say, like, I don't know that God exists, but I would say that I strongly believe that God doesn't exist, which is a very different experience. Like, if somebody put a gun to my head and said, does God exist? I'm pretty sure no. Do I know that? No. But I don't, again, because when religious people, so again, this construct, it depends on the bubble I'm in. When I talk to religious people, if they hear you're agnostic, they think that means you're open to God. I'm not open to your God. I'm open to what's true. So the reason I say atheist is because it cuts them off. Don't talk to me. So again, these words are limiting, but it just depends on who I'm talking to. I need this to be abundantly clear. I'm with peace and love. The statistical probability of any patriarchal Abrahamic God being real is so fucking low and impossible. It's so fucking low. So the idea that they're sitting here and they're like, oh yeah, like you're open. I'm not open. Don't talk to me. Okay. So, right. Chet says you can be agnostic against organized religion. I mean, you can be anything you want to be. And I think that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. You can be whatever you want to be, and you can change it every second. That's what I'm trying to convey to you. You can be anything you want to be. What you say you are almost doesn't matter to me. The question is how you living your life. The question is, could a label ever encompass like a person's whole existence, or do we use them as shorthands to explain something? Like saying you're queer or gay or lesbian. What do these words mean? Who knows? They mean what they mean, but they don't mean what they mean. So this obsession with like, well, what's your label? What do you believe? What's your thing? All of it is fluid and dependent on the circumstance in which I'm engaging with this belief. So something that I find interesting is, I watch a lot of Elle's videos when vegan gays, when she makes her videos like debating people. And something I've noticed about the people who try to debate her, the anti-vegans, is like they cannot for the life of them just explain what they believe. And I get it, because when she was asking me questions, I also found myself almost reflexively wanting to debate somebody else's opinion and not just mine. So I understand we all have that initial, like something in our brains just goes like, oh, you're not talking to me literally. But Elle and I ended up having a great conversation eventually, right? Because I wasn't debating her. I was actually learning about veganism. But when these guys come, and they're mostly men, to debate Elle, she'll ask over and over again, what do you believe? And they cannot answer the question. Okay? And it's very hard to ask yourself, what do you believe? Okay? What do you believe? And then what do you know? Because belief is not the same thing as know. Belief is kind of what you feel, what you intuit, like what you sort of vibes. But know is like irrefutable outside of human perception. Okay, even though everything's through human perception. Like we know this to be true. And even know can be a little fluid in the sense that we know this to be a glass, but obviously this is a construct that we call glass, and that ultimately, like, that's why that philosophical mind puzzle, like, what is a chair? A chair is something you sit on. Well, I guess your mom's face is a chair now. You know what I'm saying? It's like, the idea is, do not get bogged down by the labels. Get focused on who's having the conversation with you. Get focused on the bubble you're in. Think about how to communicate. See, right now, I'm public. I'm on a stream. I could have 20 different cultures watching me, all using words differently. So when they ask me, Brittany, do you believe in God? I could just easily say no. But then we could have a conversation about like, what is God, right? So again, I'm not trying to say you shouldn't be a humanist, or I'm not making a prescription, girlies. I'm just giving people tools to have a better relationship with their life. You do not have to listen to Brittany Simon on stream and be like, well, Brittany said she's not a humanist, so I'm not going to be a humanist. Girl, be a humanist if you want to be a humanist. Okay? I am not losing sleep over your relationship with words. So don't lose sleep over my relationship with words. You know what I mean? Okay. Is there any questions you want me to answer that I might have missed that you want to say? Chet says it's not a limit. You can have supernatural beliefs as a humanist, but you don't push for society to live by supernatural beliefs. Okay. I like that too. Do you understand what I'm trying to say is that humanist requires a construct? It has a do and don't. Do you understand that part of it, right? Use the label if you want to use a label. I do not care. Like, I don't want to debate you about like, should you be a humanist? What's wrong with... It feels like you're asking me a personal question, and I'm saying, personally, I do not wake up and identify with the word humanist. I do personally identify with the word queer. I do personally identify with the word gender fluid. I do personally, because I'm having a connection to these words, they mean something to me. Even though it's subjective in a construct, it means something to Brittany, the consciousness. The word humanist means nothing to me. Okay, I temporarily identified as a humanist in my 20s, but like it just doesn't mean anything to me. Now, if I identify as a vegan, that would mean so much to me. If I came out to you guys as a vegan, it would be so important to me because it would mean that I embody a real understanding and a belief, like based off of the construct of veganism, that like humans are their own consciousness and deserve the same dignity as humans, like human animals. Like that would be a very, very big deal, right? Like that's why I say I'm plant-based. But to my conservative family, I say a vegan because they don't get the difference anyways. And that's what people again, if you're at a restaurant, you're a vegan. Okay. Just that's what it says on the menu. That's what you are. But philosophically, it's a very big deal. Yeah. Right. Okay. Chat says, I don't identify as a human. The difference between myself and other animals is arbitrary. Do you know the difference between a bear and a lion? Because it feels like there's a difference there. Are you saying there's no difference between a bear and a lion and a bird? Like, you know what I'm saying? So if you don't identify as humans, you guys, come on now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you just identify as energy? Human beings are just like saying you're a bear. That's what it means. You said I didn't mean it like that? Well, that's what it sounded like, girl. You know what I mean? You can't say I don't think I identify as a human. The difference between myself and other animals is arbitrary. Humans are animals. Non-human animals are animals. There's no difference except to say that they're animals, and the difference is in the specificity of its biological experience, right? So not identifying as a human feels a little bit reductive, like silly. You have to be very clear about what that means. Because it's not, you know what I mean? Again, do you believe it or do you know it? Because don't lose your minds, guys. Like, don't let your brain fall out, okay? With peace and love, I'd love to hear what you mean, but like, don't lose your brain, you know? Let's see. Let's see. If you guys are only doing this, I see you talking about it like you're doing it as if to say animals and humans shouldn't be treated differently. That's fine. So you could say that, but there is a difference, but not the difference of the moral superiority, most likely, right? So well, maybe, who knows? Actually, I don't know if we know that yet. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure what you guys mean. Okay, let's go ahead. Well, you guys figure that out. I can always pause and answer questions later. Let's go ahead and get to this video. This is waving the red flag. I think they're trying to be more progressive. I'm unsure. If you guys watch them, please let me know. This is, let me see. So this is a video. They're about 4 minutes in. It was kind of like a preview of what to expect. I kind of skipped that and got to the heart of the topic, right? Okay, let's see. Let's go ahead and do this. Let me know how the volume is.
Man, I don't want to necessarily I don't necessarily want to do women solo traveling boom without a woman present, because I feel like our perspective on that is kind of like what can we possibly say on that? But everything else I think is solid.
Holy shit, I can say.
No, it's gonna be some
podcast.
I mean, you can talk the whole rest of the podcast on any fucking thing, including shit that you've never seen before. Like I've seen you do it, but that don't mean it would be good takes. But again, I'm open to whatever. But that's the only one that I was like, I don't know if I don't.
I thought it was interesting. It was interesting to like look into and learn about. But yeah, that's not really like as someone who's not a woman, I don't really have many like valuable takes on that, I guess.
Yeah, like I
know women. I know women that.
That's what I'm saying. I came out of a woman. That's where I started.
And best believe she was going places.
Yeah, she was solo traveling with me for 9 months, man. Come on, like luggage.
Mm-hmm.
I know all the kind of. I feel like I don't know. Like I understand being okay. I understand being like I don't want to talk as an authority on a given thing because I'm not an authority on a given thing. But this idea that we like can't talk about like from a third perspective a thing because we're not part of that group. I don't know that I agree with that.
So I
feel like our perspectives are actually interesting and valid. They're incomplete.
That's not my point. That's not my point. So we talk about things that we have no direct experience on all the time. We had a whole conversation about Drake and Mos Def, and none of us are fucking rappers, at least not anymore.
Nope.
Finn, I've heard your mixtape. It was great.
That's true.
But we're not rappers right now.
Flory was amazing, actually.
100%. So my point is that you don't necessarily have to be something in order to talk about it. I just don't think that having a perspective on solo female travel as a man I don't think there's much meat on the bone there. I just don't think it's a lot for us to talk about that's substantive. Like I can spitball about what the fuck ever. Like I can talk to you about anything.
Okay, and I'm gonna shut the fuck up because now we're just talking about what we shouldn't talk about. But I do think that I would. I think that part of what
we can talk about it. Like I don't think it would be like taboo or anything. I just don't think it's substantive.
Yeah. I do think that half of the interesting thing about women solo travel is just solo travel in general, because most of the things that are brought up in that video are just things about being a human. And so I feel like sometimes we kind of go, a thing that women are doing is a women's thing, and I'm like, sometimes it's just like, no, I'm inspired by this, so I want to talk about this inspiring thing that women happen to be taking lead on. Is kind of part of the thinking.
Okay, what do we think about this idea that you can't talk about something that you're not? I would say you can talk about anything you want, just be aware of the perspective you're coming from, and think about it. Like, funny enough, one thing that I've noticed from commentary from my community is to just make people aware that I'm aware of the position, so they know that I know. Because sometimes they can't read if I know. And sometimes, because I think sometimes I cover a topic and I think to myself, okay, this isn't my lane. I'll stay out of this perspective. I'll focus on this. But then when I don't mention that I recognize that this topic could also be covered by this lane, then I don't allow the audience to feel safe with me, that I understand. And I'm on purpose staying away from this part of it because I can't, I don't want to speak on it from that perspective. I want to speak on it from this one. It was interesting, the podcast channel, I covered this story. It was a part of my algorithm was a black gay man has started a conversation on TikTok about fathers changing diapers and the dangers of men changing diapers. And somebody said, why did you feature, because I know I do cover a lot of black creators, black content creators. It's my algorithm. It's like what it comes up a lot, I think, for a lot of reasons, mostly because the community is having the conversations in a very particular way. It's just my algorithm. Like I could easily get this conversation out of Arab communities or other communities. But what was interesting is I made sure to feature that man at the beginning because it was his TikTok that went viral. And people in the comment, just one person was like, hey, why are you featuring like black voices at the beginning of this? And I'm like, because a black person started the convo. But it might look like I'm highlighting the worst of the worst and it happens to be black, but like a black man started the conversation. Right? So like that's why I featured his voice. And like, so the irony is like I have to think about the optics of that and I have to be clear with the audience. Hey, I'm giving credit to the person starting the convo, and it's also happening in these bubbles, right? And it's happening universally in a lot of bubbles. But yeah, so these things are important when you talk about the optics. So if a man gets up here and is talking about women issues, whatever that means, and isn't at least making it clear that like, hey, I'm a guy. So, there's a limitation to how I can understand this. That's why philosophy is kind of interesting. Because philosophy sort of allows you, I think within my framework of the levels, eventually you can have conversations without needing the identities. You're just talking about ethics and values and morals without prescribing them to an identity. The issue is that the world doesn't know how to do that until they deconstruct. You cannot talk about ethics, genderless, until you deconstruct your patriarchal beliefs. Until you can't talk about treating humanity with dignity until you make sure you've deconstructed your racism. Right? Chad says, I'm confused. What is happening? Men can't change diapers. Go check out my podcast channel. I have a video on it. You guys can check it out. It's about safety measures. Like people are worried about men being predators and changing girl diapers. It's a whole bubble. Lots of bubbles talk about this a lot. So it's an interesting topic, right?
When I was kind of thinking about it, where I was kind of getting snagged is it's like, well, I have questions for like women who solo travel is kind of where it comes to. So it's like I want to, because I can speculate on why they'd want to do that. I can make some guesses, but it's like they know the actual answers.
Yeah.
Fair.
So
I solo traveled. I can answer questions.
that being said, it's Miss Sandra.
I watch women on TikTok traveling all the time on solo, but you know what I'm saying? I get it, baby. I get it.
Yeah, no, we know what your TikTok feed looks like. We know the girl in Tokyo. We remember, yeah. It's just nothing but bookmarks.
Hey, look, we all had the same girl come across our feed, so I don't know.
Yeah, we
why
did.
he's
Yeah, we
singular.
did. Hey,
I don't-
look,
I
you
don't
weren't
control
solo
what-
in that travel.
I don't control what the
I'm with you.
algorithm sends me. I don't control what the algorithm
Yes,
sends me
you do.
directly.
Yes, you do.
I know.
No.
They're trying to introduce me to new stuff in addition to feeding my echo chamber. They're trying to keep me
Okay.
hooked. You know?
Yeah,
I
you know
would
what?
like
It
some.
was some.
It's true. You know what? Actually, girls, do you know what's been showing up on my feed lately on TikTok? I was like, it is like hentai level anime. And I understand why it's sending it to me because I have anime. I like all the anime posts that come across my feed. But then I opened up the app and I was like, I was like, hello? It basically is hentai. I was like, oh, yeah, it's the tentacles. The tentacles. And then it like sprays on her face. And I'm like, TikTok.
That's in that echo chamber.
Yeah.
No, Josh, what was that going? What was that going, Josh? What was that going, Joshua?
Oh, he's saying your whole name.
I know, right?
It's fisticuffs.
I was just saying, like, you know, that
And I will say this, because Chet said I also solo traveled once and it felt super freeing, but also terrifying. Can I just say, and I told my partner this the other day, I have officially reached the age of old that I would never do the amount of drugs I've ever done before. I would never solo travel again. The reason I could even do those things was because I did not give a fuck about dying. Okay? Now I philosophically do not care about dying. I accept it, but I'm also trying to like also get to a healthy 90. You know what I mean? So I'm like, it's like this weird thing where like I'm not attached to the fact that I might die. Like if I die tomorrow, it is what it is. But I also like kind of did those things, kind of like risk, like I kind of was like tempting death because I was suicidal. So I was like, girl, fuck it. If I die tonight, worth. But like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's kind of funny that I'm not there anymore. I'm not in that position anymore where I'm flirting with death. Now respect it. I respect it, you know?
algorithm probably said, "Oh, well, you might like some cheeks, you know, and you know, with some wholesome, independent black women traveling into the city that, you know, we know that you would like to visit."
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Everyone's clicking on it,
Fair enough.
we
Here
think
you
you
go.
might too.
Fair enough.
and it wasn't wrong.
Or was it?
It wasn't because we all had the same reaction. But anyway, let us.
Fair enough.
We digress.
Okay, so I'm in between is misandry real and the loneliness crisis.
I got bad takes on both.
I know.
I have takes on both. I don't know how good they are.
Okay, somebody raise your hand with something that you feel like you have a good take on.
I mean,
Which
like,
one- which one you want to do?
let's go ahead and start off with is misandry real?
Let's hit it.
You know, y'all know my track record. I'm the least like when it comes to these topics.
Starting with
actually,
the
you know,
spice-
I like the hesitation they all have right now. The little bit of like, ooh, you know?
just for like argument's sake, I had
Oh,
to like
shit.
Google.
I know what the fuck is
Googled the
happening right now.
definition
Okay.
because I was off of fresh read.
This is, guys, the reason I wanted to watch this with you is this conversation is not coming from a position of academic background or anything. They are just regular dudes having a convo, and that's why so that's, pause. Brittany's brain, the reason I like boy bubbles is because most of them are not educated. Because they are just dudes talking, and there's something really great about that feeling because it gives me an idea of like, what are you spending your time thinking about, right? I watch a lot of academics, I watch a lot of people in positions of power, but the reason I like boy bubbles is because but this is the problem. The problem is that people watch them thinking they know what they're talking about. So don't do that. Watch it as an observation to see what it's like to watch people really try to have a combo. Okay? So
Misandry real? Yeah, I would say it is, but you know, I think a lot of people use the word incorrectly. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then like there's a lot of misogynism within
the video is titled The Misandry Paradox.
said misandry or internalized, but just the raw
Whoop-de-whoop,
definition is dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against men.
I just want to expand on this definition. Dislike of, contempt for, ingrained prejudice of men. It's not like dislike, like, oh, I don't eat a certain kind of fruit, but I like fruit. It's not that kind of dislike. In my mind, misandry has to hold like a level of disdain or disgust to create the prejudice, to create the bigotry. And that's why, generally speaking, most women aren't actually bigoted against men. They actually just are so wounded by men in the patriarchy that they feel like the only way to gain ownership is to be like, fuck all men. But at the same time, the same groups of women I know who say fuck all men are also spending all of their resources getting their brothers into therapy, getting their dads to hospitals, and making sure people have like their bills paid. So you have to process this word within a construct that makes sense to your brain. But there are real misandrists out there. They're usually TERFs. Like TERF is a really good example of a misandrist. Like you're such a misandrist that you have there are small groups of women, they are considered fringe and extreme, small groups of women that believe like being born a woman. Actually, like if we want to really be honest about it, I think Afghanistan's like a really good example of like misogyny to the nth degree. Like to live in a world where women do not speak, women can't speak to each other. Like guys, that's a level of misogyny and patriarchal overlording that is so intense, it defies most of the world. 99% of the patriarchal world is not doing that to women. That's why it's so unique. Like, so I want you to think about it in that way. These small fringe groups of men are the extreme sides of an already toxic like path or pipeline. But that's why, you know, when we talk about like Christianity goes, Islam doesn't believe like women are valuable or the same. Modern day Islam is literally the same as modern day Catholicism and Christianity. Like there are Muslims with piercings and tattoos fucking at gay clubs every night. And then, you know what I'm saying? They're so Muslim. Like you're acting like you're so weirdly lying, right? About how scary Muslims are. And at the same time, the more extreme you go on either the Christian side or the Muslim side, hey, it's all Abrahamic religions, girlies. There is an extreme analogous to one another. You can find its pair. So again, the most modern Christian and the most modern Muslim are probably all hanging out together. The most, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think people just have a really hard time because of the way that America, specifically the United States, talks about Muslims as an example. It's like this really like, you know, extreme stereotype, but obviously the Arab Muslim world is, you know what I mean? They're not acting like this, you know what I mean? So that's how I would think about misandry as well, is that like misandry isn't this casual, like, men rolling eyes. Misandry is like the women who have dedicated their lives to believing that even little boys are dangerous. Like boys, okay?
And when I read that, I said, hell yes, misandry is real.
It's right there on the paper. That's what y'all selling. Ain't
I see it in the comments.
The description.
I see it in the comments. I see it on the internet. I see it in like just some of the shit that like I've seen like women would say stuff like I've never agreed with a man like or just like downplay men's intelligence just overall like just on some dumb shit. And I get it why you could understand it, but when you just like paint this narrative, this picture for an overall group to where you label every single man or just because a man is a fucking man, he's already like 2 steps behind, you know what I mean? Like just that prejudice against men. And also I extend that olive branch to them because I can understand where that does come from as the overall culture that we live in.
I think prejudice is the word that most people should be using in these situations, but when people talk about misandry, they're using it as an equal and opposite description for misogynistic behavior. And I think that that's inaccurate in a similar vein that I wouldn't say reverse racism is a thing. When people say that reverse racism is a thing, what they're really talking about is prejudices based on what the actual accepted definition of racism is versus, you know, a Merriam-Webster kind of situation.
Because again, this is, that's funny because, oh my God, I'm gonna sneeze, hold on.
Which is usually what like the layperson will quote with racism. However, to your point, Josh, I do think there are prejudices against men. I don't think those prejudices are something that I want to give too much time to, because if I'm devoting finite resources on how we solve certain things, that's very far down the list of, you know, that's like 200th on the list of problems that I need to solve in the world.
But baby, I got you.
Yeah, but I do think that what you're saying at its core is correct. But I think that a lot of people try to think of it as an equal and opposite reaction to what women experience, and that's just not
misogyny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not. Now I agree with you 100% there. It's not an equal thing.
Yeah, my take might be worse than I thought. All right.
Oh, shit. I mean, hey, let's get into it.
No, go ahead. Let me just, hey, look.
Oh, okay, hold on, Steez. So just doing some basic definitions and basic concepts right now. Let's just go over some basic ideas of how we can think about these things. So, okay. So, because chat said, hold on, chat, let me find it. Chat said, zooming out, if you can't be racist towards white people because of privilege, then how can women be misogynistic towards men? Okay. So, again, are we talking about individuals having an internal relationship with self, or individuals having an external relationship with self, or groups, oops, why do I do that? Or groups of people having relationships with other people, right? So the dilemma is that we keep doing this thing where these are all different words and they mean all different things, okay? So we can't sit there and be like, oh, misandry and misogyny are the same. So, okay, patriarchy builds misogynistic views, and misogyny is baked into culture, which causes women to be discriminated against. Women are discriminated against, so they hold a or form a frustration and or prejudice against men that does not lead to systematic oppression. Okay? That's look at my formula. Okay, thank you. Okay, white people are racist systematically. White supremacy subjugates, let's say, black people. Black people form a frustration and prejudice against white people. But if white people weren't doing this, black people would be chill. If men weren't doing this, women would be chill. Okay? The theory is, if you're cool to me, I'm cool to you. The theory is, we can be good if you would be good. But the truth is you're not good. And the question is, why not? So then that forms the relationships we have. So the idea is like, can white men and white supremacy, well, I guess that's kind of making it a person. As long as white people believe, and the system backs it up, that white people are born superior simply by being white, that the West made America, as long as men believe they're genetically and biologically superior to women, then you will always have minority communities pushing back, and you can't work together. Okay? Right? So you have to remember that most of us, technically, all of us could be getting along until somebody makes it so we can't. The question is, who's the one making it so we can't get along? Well, usually it's the person with the strongest belief in bigotry and prejudice, right? Look at my own family dynamics as an example. They'll say, oh my God, Brittany, you're so annoying. Just get along with everybody. Why are you making a stink over everything? Because the system of my family that wants to maintain its power is that homosexuality and being trans is evil. And as long as that is the foundation of the system of my family, I cannot just sit there silent. So therefore, I'm the annoying person who's always like, I have a problem with this. And I cannot be the chill person because the system doesn't allow me to be chill. So then I hold all the responsibility now as the non-chill person. But if you had just been chill and not been bigoted, I would have been the chill person. So will you stop being bigoted and then I'll be chill? And they're like, no, you need to be chill even though we're bigoted. And that's basically what the systems are doing. The systems at play are requiring people to be the victim of bigotry and be chill with it. That's the issue. So as long as we live in a world where men get to wake up thinking they were born different than women, and therefore better in any capacity, I don't want to hear this argument about like, well, men are good at this and women are good at this. No. Until I hear you say, depends on the man, depends on the woman, everyone's good at different things, I don't want to hear it. As long as you really believe that men are good at this and women are good at this, you are subjugating and risking people's lives, basically. Okay? Same thing with, what's that called, guys, when you're kind of a nice racist? You say things like, Black people are good at basketball and Asians are good at math. What is that called? Complementary racer? What is that called? Okay. Like that's the other thing. It's like, no. Like I've heard people say like, oh, well, since you're this, like as if white people weren't playing basketball, as if it was an all white league at one point. You know what I mean? It's just so stupid. As if Asians don't play basketball. You guys are crazy. Okay. It's just like, okay, so that's like that kind of idea is like, what is that? And then it becomes, the little bit I know about basketball and the racism of football and these coaches and these white owners, don't even get me started. Okay? Don't even get me started. Okay, benevolent. Wait, I got it. Benevolent. Yes, I got it. Yeah, you got it. Racism, sexism. Benevolent? Yes, that. It's like, oh, that's why racism needs to be deconstructed time and time and time again, because you might think you're not racist until you say shit like, black people's feet wasn't traditionally made for ballet. Then you're like, oh, wait a second. What's that? Or white bodies look better in ballet because X, Y, Z. What is that? You know what I mean? Boop, skirt, skirt. No. Let's talk about it. Okay. Benevolent. Thank you. It's like, or people, there's all kinds of ways we can use this, once until you get rid of all of that, or I don't see color. Exactly. Or when you say like, oh, I don't see color. No, we need to deconstruct that, Okay.
Look, 3 on 1. Like, y'all can all pile up and then.
I mean, look, I agree with that point, but I want to hear what Finn and Eddie got to say.
I like that, Eddie. I like that you knew that I was just going to be like, yeah, no, I agree. Yep.
Join up like Voltron, because I'm ready. I like that. Let's go.
I absolutely think that there are people out there who are prejudiced against men. I think that exists for sure, and I think that there is something to be argued for misandry being baked into aspects of patriarchy, but of course patriarchy is itself incredibly oppressive towards women. Misogyny is a much more violent force. Misogyny is embedded in nearly every aspect of our culture. Potentially, there's probably an argument to be made for it being embedded in every aspect of our culture, and that's just not the case with prejudice against men. It's just, it doesn't work the same way. And I've had this conversation with men many times before, where they say, well, misandry is a real thing, and you ask, okay, well, what rights did men have to fight for? Men, like as a group, men specifically, because of course when you start getting into obviously like race,
you know what they say, state to state women's rights are limited, but state to state men's aren't. Like, only women have to think about what state they're moving to because of doctor visits, right? Binary cis way, right? Because obviously like trans men exist and they need medical care and they can't get it in all states, but generally the group that is man, usually the laws in different states, women are risking jail time for abortions. Do you know what I mean?
That adds a whole other layer to it, like men who are.
I was about to pull the civil rights movement out my ass.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's where. But that's
right to fight for the right to vote.
That's exactly it, though. It's like it's misandry. Misandry comes with other features. I think like the violence towards black masculinity in particular is a really good example of that. It's where like blackness with manhood creates this like it's intersectionality, right? Like it creates a new kind of force that people react to in a different way than just reacting to just a more generic idea of men, which in a white supremacist culture typically is describing, like in most people's minds, I think of white men specifically, right? So I think there's a lot to unpack on the topic of misandry, but overall I agree that hatred of men just for being men specifically is not a systemic thing. It's not embedded in systems of power.
I feel like we have this conversation around intersectionality, and we talk about like the unique experience that black men have when it comes to police violence, incarceration, education, healthcare, blah, blah, blah. And we talk about intersection, and inherent in intersection is like when you have two marginalized identities intersecting with one another. And we kind of go, okay, so they're black. That's a marginalized identity. And then it intersects with some other thing that causes a unique marginalized experience. And that other thing is manhood, but we somehow like skip over the fact that must mean that there's a marginalized experience with manhood. Like we kind of wave over that. There's an intersection between these two things, but one of them somehow isn't a marginalized group. And I think inherent in what you said is there is a view on men and masculinity that is a part of what we call patriarchy that negatively impacts men's lives and always has. And when you intersect that with race, you have some very unique problems that result in the deaths, imprisonment, enslavement of black men, for instance. And it's unique to black men. So the idea that it doesn't operate systemically or through lines of power just seems self-contradictory. So to Alvin's point about prejudice versus racism, but I think when it comes to this, is misandry real? Josh, your point, for sure, misandry is something that like there are individual people who maybe have like a disdain for men, but I don't think that that's particularly that much of an issue. Like I don't think.
Hold on, Chad says, so misogyny is a systematic tool that works to enforce the patriarchy, and people can have individual misogyny too, and you can have individual misandry, but there's no systematic misandry with matriarchy. Yeah, so basically, well, first of all, we don't know because we never had a matriarchy to go off of, but as a system, because I think the issue with this what would women do negates the, okay, I do not think women are better than men. I think we take for granted the way we are trained under patriarchy that inherently makes us literally better than men in a compassionate perspective, which means when we think about liberation, we think about lifting everybody up. patriarchy makes men selfish. It trains them to be selfish because that's how they survive. So men suck because of patriarchy and women are good because of patriarchy, but not in the way that people think. Like, when you are oppressed, mixed in with enough willingness to be curious, you will be a better person. When you are oppressed, but with the leverage in society, like a white woman under patriarchy, you can become philosophically evil, right? So I think what happens is that like the right amount of oppression, so not oppression, but struggle, plus curiosity, plus philosophical knowledge makes you a better person, right? So the dilemma again is like, we can't even fathom a world outside of patriarchy because we don't know what it's like. We don't know what it's like. So instead of like living in a hypothetical fantasy of like, what if we had a matriarchy? Can we just like focus on deconstructing what we have now and reestablishing ourselves? Because again, this focus on like, what should we aim for? I know is what everyone wants to know. We should aim for liberation. We should aim for goodness to occur. And we should accept that even if systematically we had these things, y'all would still have to argue with your creepy uncle at Thanksgiving. Like, that's what you, like, people are forgetting. Just because patriarchy was dismantled doesn't mean your uncle's not going to be a pervert. Okay, so there's systems in which the government and hospitals and workers and government bodies, okay? And then there's the fuel and the energy, the belief. So misogyny is the belief that backs the patriarchy. It keeps it going. If men were less misogynistic, the patriarchy would have less of a use because they wouldn't see the point of it. Okay, the less misogynistic a man, the more he deconstructs misogyny, obviously the less he feels patriarchy is required, and the less he thinks of himself as inherently better than a woman. Okay, so that reflects in the culture. But this is why I say you have to talk to your little boys. This isn't about helping men that are grown; they're fucked. It's about helping boys that are coming into the world, that are discovering themselves every day, that are learning, that are trying to figure out, what does it mean to be a man, right? I think one of the greatest reactions I saw to Vinland Saga season 2 was how many people thought it was boring or wasn't violent enough, or they hated that he became like a tree hugger or whatever you want to call it. And that's one of the quotes I kept seeing. It was cracking me up. It tells you a lot of where people are, and I get it. Peace is really boring when you don't know what it is. Okay? It's really, it looks even like silly and childish when you don't know what it is. Okay, I promise you, like, wisdom and maturity looks really fucking lame when you don't know what it is. And that's why people will even be mad at me for calling out misogyny, the misogyny of Kyle Klinsky and all these men, because, like, I obviously believe that they're using misogynistic language to, quote, own the right, but all that does is throw people under the bus that fall into this category. And how does that help, right? Because they want to fight. And I'm saying, why are you fighting? And I'm not saying don't fight, don't defend yourself. I'm saying, why are you picking fights? And they'll say they already picked the fight. They started it. So let's end it by not engaging in the same way. But it's not about being nice to Republicans. Nothing I am ever saying on this stream is the message of being nice to Republican leaders. I'm not saying by the way, niceness is fakeness and kindness is embodied. Guys, we are kind because it's an embodied experience. We are nice because we're low on spoons and getting through the day. Okay? So be nice when you have to be nice, but I'm asking you to be kind. I'm asking it to be a part of who you are as a person. By the way, I'm not even asking you. By the way, these are just words. I have to reiterate all the time. I'm not making a prescription. We're all going to die, Habibis. It doesn't matter what you do. What matters is that you decide if you're going to break a generational curse or not before you die, but you will die. So just if you're new to my audience, I am not making a prescription, but I'm saying if you want the outcome to be a change, you have to act different. You cannot keep doing the same thing over and over again and be like, why am I keep getting the same result? What's that quote? Insanity. That's the definition of insanity. Y'all are insane. I'm saying do something else or you're just going to get the same result. Do something else or you're going to get the same result. And what I had to accept in my personal journey, what really blew my mind is that, people, they were going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And that's what it was. Like, that's what another version of thinking about level 4 is like, oh, you guys are going to keep doing the same thing. Because I thought there would be an end to it eventually. When I was younger, I used to think like, okay, if I just tell people the data, if I just use facts, they'll change their minds. Because who's going to say, who's going to argue with facts? Okay, so now we fully accept that we live in a world where you are going to continue trying to do the same thing we've always done, and you're going to wonder why the world never changes. Got it. I am still going to do what I'm going to do, even if nobody else is going to do it. And you can call me crazy for the rest of my life, but at least I will die peaceful.
That causes much of an issue.
It's not a systematic, structure.
Yeah, it's not changing up people's lives. But the part where I strong disagree is whether or not there is a systemic kind of thing that runs in parallel to something like systematic racism or whatever, or misogyny. And I would say, yeah, absolutely. Now, the conversation of whether or not it's like equal, I would say no, but like maybe, but I don't think that's the right argument to have to try and compare it or make it at odds with one another. I would just say it does follow systematic lines, and I feel like all of us in all of our content have talked about it like repeatedly, like we always.
Wait, what follows systematic lines?
Right argument to have. It's like equal. Like systematic racism is whether or not there is a systemic kind of thing that runs in parallel to something like systematic racism or whatever, or misogyny. And I would say, yeah, absolutely. Now, the conversation of whether or not it's like equal,
he's saying he believes, so he said he would be the outlier, that there is a system in which misandry lives. Is that what he's saying?
I would say no, but like maybe, but I don't think that's the right argument to have to try and compare it or make it at odds with one another. I would just say it does follow systematic lines, and I feel like all of us in all of our content have talked about it like repeatedly, like we always talk about the way the patriarchy hurts men, but when it comes to saying, okay, so the patriarchy hurts men, then all of a sudden we act brand new, like what we just said doesn't count anymore. Okay.
So I don't think that maleness, because there's also a situation where you can have two things separately that have no effect, and then when you combine them together, and now they have a huge effect. That's how you get like bombs and shit out of like benign materials. So synergies that work with
intersection.
Oh, Chet says he thinks there's a type of misandry done by patriarchy to men, especially black men, I think. A type of misandry done by patriarchy to men, especially black men. Well, a thought I had when he was talking, and I don't know if this relates, is how you can take like, I'll use my own people as an example. You take an Assyrian population that's primarily patriarchal, but also, quote, respects women and they work and they do things, but also a woman isn't fulfilled until she has babies, but also women work and that's amazing and braggable. And also women go to school, but also they stay home and have babies. Okay. I can tell you how many of my cousins went to college and then everyone expected them. Anyways. Okay. So, they want their girls to go to college, but they want them to have babies. Okay. In which the men want the women to protect them at any cost, but the men will still adhere to patriarchal belief systems and or misogyny. And then when they are wounded, the women will shoulder that burden and do that emotional labor, but it comes at the expense of the women because the men don't appreciate it. They expect it. And then they kind of like, attack you when you abandon them because they're not holding up their end of the bargain of actually seeing you as a person. So when they don't support you and your exact needs the way that you need, they're like, you're a woman, get over it. But then when they're hurt, it's like, you know what I mean? So there's something to be said about even minority men existing in a world where they don't, I guess all men actually don't know how to make space for women to have their feelings as like validated or equal. This reminds me of a scene of a show I have not seen. What's that show called? With the red capes and the girls and stuff. I haven't seen it. But I saw a clip on TikTok and it showed that one of the girls who was one of the slave girls, I don't know, the enslaved girls, I don't know what they are. And she had been, Handmaid's Tale. Thank you, chat. I saw one of the clips that shows a Handmaid's Tale girly being chosen by one of the guys who says he's going to change. He's going to change. So she goes back to him. And then she finds out that he has another Handmaid's Tale in the house. And she's like, what the fuck? I thought you were going to change. Yeah, bros don't change overnight like that, girl. Like, I don't know the context. I just saw a clip on TikTok, but I kept thinking like, this is what a toxic relationship is. It's this idea that we had one good conversation about it and that's enough for him to change. I've been there in my 20s, right? I just didn't understand in my 20s that the men I was dating, even if they were bisexual or whatever, needed to deconstruct the patriarchy and misogyny from their worldviews. They needed to do that. Because I kept thinking, well, you're liberal, you're poly, you're in gay communities. Like, it was enough, right? Discord said they're cloaks, not capes. Whatever, girls. Okay. The point is I think we want to believe that one good conversation will change minds, which is why debate doesn't work. Because the implication of a good debate is like, all you need is one good debate and you'll change the world. Girl.
I guess is the
That's my point. I think it does,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think that maleness in and of itself is not marginalized. So I think when you attach, to Finn's point, when you attach blackness and masculinity, that's when you get that point. That's when you get the bomb, right? Benign material sitting in a safe storeroom, no
Inert,
explosion.
yeah.
You know, two things combined, synergize, bomb. I think that what's hurting men now with the patriarchy is the fact that the patriarchy is being pushed back against, and those men are not actually adapting well. So I think their inability to adapt to a situation where the patriarchy does not allow them the same overwhelming show of force that it used to, you know, even quite frankly, you know, 30, 40 years ago, like that has changed. I think they're not adjusting to that. So I don't think the patriarchy in and of itself, like the patriarchy in and of itself was overwhelmingly positive on most output metrics for men. Like men were living longer, it helps your careers. Like it's like that's systemically supported. I think now what you have, yeah. And then so now what you see is a lot of people, and it ties into the, you know, the other conversation, which is why I picked these two as my favorites. So the loneliness epidemic. You have a lot of men that are more lonely than women because they're not adjusting to a situation where the patriarchy does not favor them as much. So I don't think there is a situation where you're marginalized just for being male. I think it only comes with, you know, people along various racial, ethnic, nationality lines where you combine those two and then you get the bomb.
This is actually, sorry, no, go.
Go.
I just I fucked up a while ago. I made a mistake that like I had to kind of confront that, because I had a segment in one of my videos that was talking about how I have had people, you know, present the idea of female privilege to me. Maybe it is real in certain scenarios, right? Because like I think it kind of would exist in a similar vein if we were arguing that yes, systemic misandry exists, then like yes, there are situations where it's beneficial to be a woman. I think would be kind of the flip side of that conversation. And in my mind, like my reasoning was, if you have a black man and a white woman and law enforcement involved, how's that situation going to go? Right? So in my mind, it was like, well, it's her femaleness that is kind of modifying.
What is this about? Wait. Did they find out? Well, wait a second. I gotta look into that. Because isn't that the same actor that did abuse his partner and was on tape saying the most toxic shit ever? Was he dating a white woman? Is that what it is? What do you mean the apology? I'll have to look into that.
Right? So in my mind, it was like, well, it's her femaleness that is kind of modifying this and creates such a dangerous situation for the man who's involved here. But
it's her
when
whiteness.
I stepped back and, you know, examined it further, which I should have done before like posting the segment in this video. It's not her femaleness that's necessarily granting her that, it's her whiteness. Like the whiteness is where the power is coming from. It's not the fact that she's a woman. In fact, the fact that she's a woman in that scenario is she's powerless. Her whiteness creates a pure powerlessness that she needs to be protected, which is part of why she's so dangerous, right? Well, like in the scenario being described. So yeah, I go for it.
My issue with that way of looking at what power is that I think...
Wait. Discord said he was dating a white woman at the time. Wait, wasn't he the one who said, I want to be Martin Luther King Jr.? He was saying that to a white woman? It's a bit funny, isn't it? It's a little funny. Wait, I gotta look into that more.
Instead of looking at like the impact of a set of situations to determine like who has power or whatever, we try and turn it into ideology first and break it down and go like, oh, well, actually, her power isn't really power because it's dependent on this structure. But it's like, that's kind of how all power works. Like an individual white man by himself or an individual white cop doesn't have power by themselves. They have a system that helps them. Now, with white femininity, for instance, that power is activated through like imagery around pure...
Oh my God, no. Discord said, yeah, he wanted her to be his Coretta Scott King into his MLK. Yeah, oh my God. That's what I remember. I was like, wait, didn't he say so? I thought they were a black power couple. That's not funny. Okay. But wait, the thumbnail made it sound like he was innocent or something. But now I have to look into it because the implication is that like, you know what I mean? But okay, noted. That's so funny.
This powerlessness, demureness, all of that stereotypical shit. So you're not wrong there. But to say that a situation where you can enact violence on another person through a system, regardless of the narrative there, that's power. And that power exists uniquely when femaleness is added into the equation. So it's definitely not her femaleness by itself, but it's a modifier. Because if you change up the genders there, the scenario doesn't go exactly the same way.
But there are also various situations where black women don't get a force.
Whoa. Chad says, stop saying females when you mean femininity. So obviously you want to say the B word when you say female. Are you talking to the guys on the camera? Okay. I think they are not trying to say that. To give them the benefit of the doubt, it feels like they are having like a cis conversation about cisgendered people and using male and female as shorthand. They don't even sound like the group of like the black bubble that specifically says female the way that the misogynists do. They don't even sound like the guys who say women the way the white guys on Reddit go women. I think they're literally just trying to make it clear they're talking about male and female maybe. So I don't know if you guys are getting the same energy, but I'm not getting the energy that they, as a group of men, since they tend to be more left and progressive and liberal, are trying to signal to misogynists, like female. So just, think about that. I think if you look at the context, I could be wrong, but given the context, I don't think that's their intention.
That same level of treatment.
Yeah, it's not the hard F. I'm not hearing the hard F exactly.
In the exact same situation.
Of course.
So
because they're not white.
So exactly. So the whiteness is the primary modifier, if nothing else, right?
See, you've left out a base rate comparison there.
That's
you would
fair.
have to say whether
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. No,
you would have to compare them to black men to make the argument that you're making, which maybe you have stats on this, but that by itself doesn't tell us anything.
I actually do have stats on this.
I thought you might. Yeah.
As I pointed out at various points, I actually did a good bit of this research myself back when there were various sources where you could find like murder and also violent crime data, online free access. The LA Times used to keep a database. The Guardian used to keep a database. Please support the Guardian if you don't. They constantly get their budget cuts, and that's why they can't do this kind of cool shit anymore. But the FBI also has not current but old like databases on those kind of things. The murder rate for men in general is astronomically higher versus their female counterparts just across the board. So black men get murdered way more than black women. White men get murdered way more, and even any misclassification doesn't close that gap significantly. But if you look at violent crime and like police brutality and all that kind of stuff, it's actually much closer than you think. It's actually very, very close in terms of overall rates.
For everyone, or black men and women specifically?
Black men and women. For
Chad says we don't actually mean it to be derogatory when a lot of say female. It literally has no thought. For most of us, been saying since 12 years old. I say males too. True, but it is being co-opted right now by misogynistic bubbles to be a signal for misogyny. So you might want to update your language and stop saying females because it's being co-opted. The same way like white supremacy gets dog whistled through words, the same way we don't make the okay sign anymore. As much as it might be innocent in your bubble, it is being co-opted by very dangerous communities and they are using it as a point towards them. So you cannot be surprised that people are like, uh-oh, what is that? Because it is so... again, I understand, but I would say that we have to start, thinking about updating our language because we don't want to signal to the wrong communities.
For violent crime and police brutality, I actually didn't look at every single race. I looked at every single race for murder with my data. But for black men and women, it's very, very close if you look at it from that wide of a perspective.
I also would just make sure that everyone who feels like they're using it neutrally, then you would agree that you would call a trans woman female and a trans man male, correct? If you're being consistent, if you're saying, oh, there's no, it's just neutral, I say it generally, then you would then be consistent with your language. And when talking about trans people would also continue to use male and female, correct? Because if not, then I would argue that you have to deconstruct that then, right? Okay.
Really? No, I mind blown. Didn't know that.
Yeah, but again, like black men are something like 6 times more likely to be murdered than black women. But if you add in assault, again, every violent crime, like it's almost 1-to-1.
I think that gives us like a picture, but it's not like I think sometimes we do like when it comes to these conversations around the way that like, for instance, patriarchy hurts men. I think we start doing this weird shit where we like try and like do food stamp discounts on being murdered. Like if you get if a single population is getting murdered at like a rate of 6-to-1 to another population that they share comparable experiences of violence with, in any other scenario we would go, that's a unique problem. Like that's a unique problem that is affecting this demographic. But here for some reason, I'm not saying you specifically are doing this, but here we try and go like, oh, but these murders don't like this discrepancy in murder doesn't actually count. It's like being dead is one of the worst situations that can happen to you.
That's
if it's happening at 600% for one group versus another, that's a systematic issue. Period. Even if there's some other metrics that are like kind of equal. So, and I don't think we play that game with any other group.
And I agree, but some of it is like I remember being at the table with like CDC officials because again, this is a relationship that holds true for every single like racial ethnic group, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that they would talk about is testosterone poisoning, right? So it's like risky behaviors based on potential physiological differences, because there are very few outside of hormonal, in terms of like brain chemistry and all that kind of stuff. Like our brains are very, very, very similar. There are very few areas of the brain that are different. Like you're looking at like the preoptic area, and then amygdala responses to fear stimuli, all that kind of shit. But very few areas of our brains are different. So they actually talk about testosterone poisoning almost in an academic sense. So like a lot of this stuff is just like men being more prone to dangerous behaviors, like dangerous and aggressive behaviors. Now, I'm not saying that's not exacerbated by the patriarchy, but I also don't think that that's something that's caused by women, right? Like I think that's something that's like.
Hold on, this isn't my place to speak on this, so if other people want to talk about it, they can. But I gotta say something as like, I'm not defending the use of it, just trying to get people to understand that Black men, especially from the hood, speak in that way. That is our culture. Black communities are not exempt from patriarchal misogyny. Your culture, our culture, Arab culture, everyone's culture needs to deconstruct, right? So it's not unique to Blackness. You are not unique in this. You are like every other community around the world globally. Your culture is not special if it's rooted in patriarchy. It's just patriarchy. So I'm not sure if you want to say that Black communities are just this way because it's cultural, when it paints Black people as patriarchal and misogynistic. Is that the way you want your community to be known? Because as much as it might be true from an Arab perspective as well, I don't want that to be my community. I want my community to be people who deconstruct and see the value of women and men and all people and queer people, right? So I understand you're thinking it's normal in my bubble, but misogyny is normal. And that's why we need to have these conversations, right? So again, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. But from even an Assyrian perspective, my family says the same thing. Like, this is cultural. This is our people. Okay, well, we need to update. Because at this point, like, it's killing us. It's not helping us. It's not putting us in good positions. It's not benefiting us as much as you feel like it is. It's not. Like, this whole loneliness crisis, this deviation between men and women, a lot of it is coming from what people are clinging on to as cultural. Well, your culture is driving women away. Okay, your culture is like moving men in different directions of loneliness. And so like maybe we should update our culture. So again, I don't mean to, obviously speak for Black communities, but just to map it onto other communities as well. I'm not sure that's the hill we all want to die on as a people.
No.
We do it at a systemic level because we do it individually and it scales up.
I think there's a problem with the argument, like the argument that I'm making and the way that it maybe comes across is that, and understand, because there's a point that all of you all have made, which is that like misandry mostly gets brought up by idiots who are trying to derail conversations around misogyny. And so a lot of the arguments are like, oh, men's negative experiences are actually the problem, like the cause by women or caused by feminism. That's not true, as far as I can tell. And so I just want to preempt that stance of like, oh, women are causing the. That's not anything in my argument, at least. I understand why it's associated with the argument.
Okay, I'm glad he said that, so we know where he's standing, okay? Because this isn't fresh and fit, y'all. Okay, these boys are not fresh and fit, okay? Right? So I think we should stop looking at them like they're fresh and fit. They're not, okay? They're not even in the same genre, okay? So we have to consider that when we're listening to them, right?
But it's not my argument.
Yeah, that's fair.
So like when it comes to us being more, because implied by what you were just saying is a conversation that comes up a lot when people go like, men are getting murdered alive. This is a problem. This is a systemic problem. This is something that happens at power structures. They're being murdered and then imprisoned for murdering people, and a shit ton of men are just being locked away. Like chunks of our population are just being locked away. Part of that is people then go, yeah, but who's killing them? Oh, well, other men. Well, therefore it doesn't count. This makes no sense as an argument. Like, first of all, even if it is a testosterone poisoning thing, I would venture that
And by the way, I do hear you, chatter. You said, you're missing the point to the other chatter. You said, I'm not saying that I use it or defend it. I'm pointing it out that you go into spaces, they might not have updated their language yet, for sure. And I'm adding onto your statement that I think we all have to go back home to a bubble that hasn't updated. And sometimes people don't know their intentions, but sometimes the people talking also don't know their intentions. Like, they don't know how it hurts people. So, I don't think anyone's arguing in the chat, guys. I don't think anyone's like disagreeing. I think we're just expanding on these ideas, and we're remembering that like we have to be aware of how especially our elders are acting, and we have to update them. Okay, we got to take our boomer parents by the hand, our boomer uncles, our boomer aunties, and drag them into the future, because God knows Okay.
Whole bunch of it is to do with socialization. And when you teach when you teach men that one, it is appropriate to induce physical harm on other men.
And by the way, you know what? Props to the way they're having this conversation, like Chad already said, because imagine if this was a Fresh and Fit panel, how trash it would be. At least they're listening. At least they're not talking over each other. At least they're not, at least they're listening. At least they're trying. So I know the bar is in hell, but girl, just let me, okay.
To make your point known, and two, that your pain in response to being harmed is not valid. Those two things are a way that a power structure indoctrinates you into your own self-harm. And I think that that's a large contributor to this. And I would classify as
Oh, I like the way he said that, though.
Power structure indoctrinates you into your own self-harm.
How a power structure indoctrinates you into your own self-harm. Men in the military, girl.
I think that that's a large contributor to this. And I would classify as internalized misandry, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I agree. And so my final piece on that, because I knew that's where they was going, and I think you're right, is that murder is actually fairly fucking rare. So all of that to say, if your point stands on say murder, I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying like as a person, because but I'm just saying like as a person who's talked to people where like a lot of times they bring up the same murder statistics I have, murder's still fucking rare. This is the killer of men, like just being frank.
Alcohol? Was he pointing at alcohol? Because men really dropping dead from heart disease, smoking, it's kind of amazing to me how throughout my life, men primarily were the smokers. Even smoking has been a man's pastime. All my brothers have engaged in smoking and their wives did not. My father was a cigar smoker and a cigarette smoker. My mother was not. Okay? I did smoke weed and I smoke cigarettes a little bit, but barely, versus partners I've had, they smoke cigarettes. Okay? Or did smoke cigarettes, depending on when I met them. But yeah, even smoking is it's an interesting, all my uncles, and not my aunties. Yeah, not that women don't smoke, but.
That's also a socialization issue. Like
that is a better argument. No, that is a better argument. Because that is a better argument.
And also the way alcohol is sold to women don't drink bourbon and whiskey and all these things. That's a man's drink. Remember How I Met Your Mother when Robin wanted a cigar and whiskey and Barney's like, holy crap, you're a man. Women's drinks are like fun alcohol with 6%. They're not drinking these very strong. And men, their ego is dependent on how hard they can handle their alcohol. So patriarchy is killing men. Holy shit. I love this conversation. I never talk about this. And now I'm so excited because patriarchy convinces men to drink themselves to death to prove they're manly. Oh my God, bro.
Because we talked about murder. Like the same way we could talk about.
And I'm not saying you did,
and it's like a little thing. It's like, no, the shit stretches out in a bunch of different ways. If we want to talk about the way men are taught to or not taught to deal with their emotions, misandry. Men being murdered, misandry. Men being in prison, misandry. Men not being taught how to socialize in order to form healthy, supporting non-romantic, non-sexual bonds with other people of any gender, misandry. All of that shit, I would say, falls into that and is reinforced by systems of power.
And then
wait, hold up, I gotta rewind that.
Out in a bunch of different same way we could talk about.
And I'm not saying you did,
and it's like a little thing. It's like, no, the shit stretches out in a bunch of different ways. If we want to talk about the way men are.
Wait, what?
That is a better argument.
Because
that is a better argument.
I picked murder because we talked about murder. Like the same way we could talk about.
And I'm not saying you did.
And it's like a little thing. It's like, no, the shit stretches out in a bunch of different ways. If we want to talk about the way men are taught to or not taught to deal with their emotions, misandry. Men being murdered, misandry. Men being in prison, misandry. Men not being taught how to socialize in order to form healthy, supporting non-romantic, non-sexual bonds with other people of any gender, misandry. All of that shit, I would say, falls into that and is reinforced by systems of power.
And then even if you and to your point, even if you want to put all of those things as small things, it could just be death by 1,000 cuts. So my whole thing is that I don't think you should call that misandry. I think you should call that patriarchy. I think all of that is patriarchy.
That to me feels like an unnecessary semantic concession.
I think semantics matter.
No, I agree. That's why I'm saying
and wait till we talk about how I'm gonna tear apart the loneliness epidemic piece of this. What you call it?
Oh yeah,
because communication of how you talk about this shit and how you socialize this stuff 1,000,000% matters. And I think that misandry versus calling something patriarchy is profoundly impactful in the way the
I'm curious
social media
to see
landscape
how
is.
you say this, because I would say if you have a system that impacts lots of different people of lots of different genders in various different ways, talking about the way it impacts a specific group using a unique word has importance. And my other issue is something that seems to be and Finn, I think you should go in a second because I feel like I haven't heard from you in a bit, but
okay, so am I understanding correctly? This is what I think ends up happening. I think this is what I hear happening. So he's saying, oops, I did this thing right. Okay. I don't know why I do this. I'm going to figure this out one day. I don't get it. Okay, it's going to be gray because I don't understand things. I will eventually learn to use my paint, okay? He's saying men are killed at a 600% rate, and this statistic is outrageous. By the way, femicide is up globally. Okay, so this is outrageous, and we should do something about it. And the only reason men are being targeted must be misandry, not patriarchy. And we would argue that patriarchy is a system at play that tells men they're cannon fodder. Therefore, when they die, it doesn't matter, because this plays into what I think a lot of people mistake about it's not racism, or it's not misogyny, it's economics. You know how people say like, oh, racism isn't the problem or misogyny isn't the problem. It's classism. You know how people are always like, it's classism, right? It's like money. The dilemma is like money is only so good if you have it. But if you're a woman or a black or brown person, right, you might not have as much capital. So then the reality is like, it can't be just classism. It has to also be racism and misogyny. Because again, if women aren't leaders and men aren't voting and black people, even black, rich black people, black men, we'll talk about even when you're rich, black, and a man, you're still less than your white counterpart. So then we know it isn't just classism. We know there's a racism element to it. So if men are dying at a 600% rate, that's not just misandry within the system. That's a neglect from the system at play that has always convinced men that they are not worthy of anything. So obviously, like in a world where like there's the 1% and everybody else, the 1% doesn't care about all these men dying. That's why leaders send 19-year-olds to die in their wars. That's literally like, think about the fact that our U.S. military is willing to send your high school sons who just graduated high school to die in battles they would never set foot in themselves, right? Like that is patriarchy killing your boys in the name of patriotism. That's not misandry. Now, you might say, I guess like you could say women play into this because they also buy into patriarchy. So therefore they also buy into misogyny, and they also buy into the narrative that women can't be soldiers because men are better soldiers, because that also is a reality, right? So there's, I think like is that what, you know, I would call it just patriarchy, but he's almost saying like it's almost reductive. But misandry, I don't know.
My issue with putting it all under one umbrella is that something that often happens is I hear
Chad said, why do they always send the poor? Because the poor is desperate, because they will tell you that they'll pay for college and give you a house and all these other things, right? There's also a conversation happening in progressive circles that if you join the military to get your college paid for, like you're gross. But also the reason these people get basically tricked into joining the military so their college is paid for is because they might die before the government has to pay them for that. Or they might not, you know, try to get their benefits, or they're so fucking oppressed in their little neighborhoods and their school systems, and they might be facing prison, that the only way out, most of my brothers joined the military because they literally didn't know what to do with their lives. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have a sense of direction. So they were like, I guess I'll join the military. And I'm like, no, no, don't do that. Right?
And complain about a valid, like, emotional issue or concern, and then people kind of go, oh well, that's just the patriarchy, which by words is fine, but what they're actually saying is, hey, shut up about that. That's what you're actually expressing is just like the trickle down effects of something that's really mostly about non-men, femmes, women, whoever. And so the solution to your problem is not in addressing your problem directly at all. It's in focusing as much energy as possible on our concerns. And I think that's a very good way of alienating a group of people whose concerns are actually entirely in line with what non-men want anyway. But by saying,
okay, hold on. Chad's saying, I think the point they're trying to make is that patriarchal expectations for men cause internalized misandry in men that perpetrates continuous self-harm and self-loathing by men, right? No, I don't think any man is self-hating on the premise that men suck enough to go to war, right? Like, I mean, that might be his argument, but like, is he saying that men are have internalized they think men are so disgusting and they're so disgusting because they're men that they are now getting murdered or murdering each other. When a woman has internalized misogyny, a woman is self-loathing and believes women aren't as good as men, and then end up becoming pick-me's or giving like their power up to men, which then in turn could get them murdered. But if men believe if they have internalized misandry and they believe men are worthless and disgusting, they're not giving their power over to women and voting them into office when they murder each other. I don't know.
Saying, hey, no, it's not about your thing. It's about this larger thing. So shut the fuck up about your specific thing. Instead of going like, cool, that's a specific part of this. Let's address those while we're addressing.
Like, these men aren't dying, uplifting or praising women. They're literally dying and taking women with them.
This because it's all part of the same system, but we don't do that.
So, and I'm gonna shut up because then it's becoming a fucking Eddie Budden and Ish podcast right now.
Yeah. That's why you got the light skin, bro.
There's a very good reference, by the way, for people.
Oh yeah, I'm caught you, my nigga.
we see.
I got you. I see it.
There we go. But
I didn't know the girl, man. I didn't know her from you.
Yeah, man. You did. You did. Shut the fuck up in 2024. But anyway, so
see, well, you always fucking acting light skin on this podcast, bro.
You the lightest motherfucker on the podcast. Actually, not today. Not today.
I mean,
anyway,
you got beat out by one shade, nigga. One shade.
You're welcome, Eddie.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man.
That's my favorite soundbite of the year.
What?
That's my favorite soundbite of the year, man. That's the greatest shit that he's ever done, and that's saying a lot.
What is?
Where they arguing about that shit, and he just throws his headphones off and says, "Shut the fuck up." In 20, no, yes.
Oh
Stop
yeah.
talking about the shit.
He starts yeah.
After he claimed that he claimed this was being emotional.
Yeah, he was like, "Why you being emotional?" And he's fucking screaming at the top of his lungs, like he's gaslighting the fuck out of that man. The whole fucking podcast.
The way he was moving was wild because he was literally screaming at the top of his lungs. The other dude says, "Man, I'm about to start screaming back at you," and he's like, "Look, I don't know why you're."
These are the common mature men. So they're making fun of these men for like, you know what I mean? But like, these are the yes, men are stoic.
I'm like, you're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit, man. Because I know whatever he got accused of doing, that he did all of that.
He did that shit. Whatever they said,
he did it. Whatever they said, he did that shit. Holy fuck!
Guilty as fuck. Like goddamn.
Guilty as fuck. Okay.
No, but so my only thing about how you just phrased it is I think you're doing what you accuse other people of doing like earlier when you stated in that section, right? So when people say that that's just the patriarchy, what I think ultimately they're saying is that it's the onus is on men to solve it, which I firmly believe, right? So if it's a man-made problem, men need to come up with solutions to solve it. And when you put it in something that has the connotations and bag,
Patriarchy is a man-made problem supported by most people of all genders. I need people to remember, much like the vegans who forget the world isn't vegan, the progressives who forget the world isn't progressive. Guys, like, the world en masse, including women, are more than happy to uphold the patriarchy. So, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Like, if you think we're about to solve shit in the next 1,000 years, please sit down and read a book. We are doing our best, but we are not about to solve patriarchy or misogyny or racism. We are just chipping away at this generational curse, okay? It is just a global phenomenon. So we have to recognize that and then kind of recognize why you have to let go of the attachment of changing the world and focus on doing the right thing even if nobody else is doing it.
of something like misandry, what you're saying is it's not my problem to solve it. It's everybody's problem to solve my problem. So I think putting it in patriarchy makes it squarely like this is on you, motherfucker. Like the onus is on you to fix the shit that your structural issues caused. And now I'm off my shit.
But it also kind of neglects the fact that like these interactions aren't just people on X, formerly known as Twitter, being shitty to a guy who's sad. Right. Like I feel like so often when we're talking about this kind of thing, a guy brings up a problem that is unique to men, like, male loneliness, male isolation, these kinds of things.
Okay. In the most good faith way, loneliness is not unique to men. It keeps getting painted this way that men uniquely are experiencing loneliness because they keep saying women form communities, women have friendships, women do these things. Yes, but it's not unique to men. Women also experience loneliness. They also struggle to make friends. They also struggle to have communities. Femme people, non-binary people, like so many nerdy, autistic, AFAB people I know are very lonely. Okay, a lot of women I know are deeply struggling to find community right now, like deeply. Okay. Yes, chat says crazy cat lady. Exactly. This idea of women haven't been lonely. You guys just never cared about the fact that women were lonely because, you know, it just never mattered. But now that men are lonely, it's like the most fucking important thing ever. And it was always important. Men's loneliness is important. Everyone's loneliness is important. And no, we can't just go to church again. We actually have to have a deeper philosophical relationship with self, which is why I'm telling you, it is not about going back to church. It's not even, hear me when I say this, about having friends. It's about knowing why you want to have friends. It's about knowing why you're going to church. Okay? It's about why, because I think we don't understand why we even want community or why we even want friends. We're not thinking about it. Once I really thought about why I wanted friends and what was I doing and how was my relationships have gotten so much better from when I was in my early 20s. Okay. So again, I need everyone to realize this loneliness epidemic is just it's not because religion is gone or any of these things are gone. It's because we're not having a relationship with ourselves, but we act like this is the dilemma of being anyone. Your pain is valid. First, I just want to validate everyone's pain. Your pain is valid. Everybody is suffering. Okay. And it's not as you're not unique. And people go through this. Not everyone, but large categories of people are going through similar things. Okay. So, I want you to first let go of that attachment that you're unique and then embrace the reality that everybody is suffering. And then ask yourself, well, if everyone is suffering, how do I have a better relationship with myself and others so I can mitigate that suffering, so I can harm reduce? Okay. Yeah, Discord said, do they not realize you can be lonely in a group too? Well, I used to be lonely and I've always been surrounded by people. I have never not had friends. People have had crushes on me and I've had crushes on them since I was 14. I've always been surrounded by people. And when I was at my absolute loneliness, I was still surrounded by people. Funny enough, the reason I went on those solo trips that I mentioned earlier was to find myself. And I learned that I didn't have to be lonely anymore when I had a relationship with myself. When I was completely isolated, completely away from people, I stopped being lonely because I started to have a really genuine, grounded, deep relationship with myself. And then when I came back to people, I had better and deeper relationships with those people. But I stopped being lonely before I, went back to hanging out with people, because every time I was hanging out with people, I felt so abandoned. And I was like, why do I feel so lonely here? And it was because my expectations of relationships were built off of fantasy, was built off of media, was built off of family lore. Once I realized that human beings and friendships are not meant to work like a sitcom, my life changed. Okay? Church is not the end all be all. Church is not the answer to your problems. We're doing it again where we're selling church as like the answer to everything. Church is not the answer, guys. But see how the only solution they keep giving men who are lonely is go to church? What is it going to matter if men keep going to church, but men also think they're nothing without partners? Men need to deconstruct their relationship from partnerhood. These men who are going to church don't have female counterparts to meet at that church. And I say female because of the bubble we're viewing today, obviously, okay? They don't have a woman counterpart, right? But that's because the women are going more liberal. But those men who are going to church to find a wife need to deconstruct this idea that they needed a wife in the first place. Why do you think you need a wife in the first place? And it's because we live in a world of settling. Today's podcast is going to be so good, guys. And it's about settling relationships. We settle, and then we pedestal relationships that have settled, and we call this relationship goals. It's not relationship goals. It's just settling.
And it's like, well, the way to solve that is solving all of these other problems that impact people of other genders, and you need to shut up about it. Does that really happen outside of the internet? Does that happen off of social media? And don't get me wrong, interactions on social media matter. They impact individual people. They impact the way people feel about themselves. It's not like those things are negligible. They matter. Those things matter. But I've got actually like here within reach, like abolition, feminism now. Angela Davis has dedicated so much of her life to like specifically addressing the way black men are targeted by patriarchy and the violence toward them and the incarceration of black men. And that's like a huge part of what she's done in her feminist work and many other feminists as well. I mean, right on home.
But how many Fresh and Fits have read Angela Davis? Right? Which, by the way, I wanted to do a book club in the Discord where we listen to one of her audiobooks because I thought it'd be really good. But the question is, are these men reading her books? Like, some men are reading her books, obviously. But are enough men reading her books? Are enough men reading the books of these women who are dedicating any space to them? Because it feels like sometimes I do find that women will dedicate space to men and men refuse to engage in it. And then they go, you never care about us. It's like, girl, we are making room for you. You just don't read the books or listen to the podcasts or watch. So then, you know what I mean? Unless you're a content creator who dedicates all of your content to supporting men are like, you don't support us. That's how it feels, which is, by the way, why as a content creator, I work really hard to make content for, quote, women, even though, you know, it fluctuates. Guys, subscribe. Let's beat the men. Just kidding. But like, okay, the joke is that like, at least with women, you can make content for men and they'll still watch. But for men, they won't watch unless the content feels like it's for them. And I don't need an audience like that.
Thank God. I promise I didn't do this on purpose, but right under it, we've got The Will to Change.
I got a shelf. Where's the scholar? Go turn your camera. Turn your camera.
Bell hooks, bitch.
But that's
True. Discord said Bell Hooks also dedicated space to men. Yes, she did.
that's the thing, right? Is these guys who are using the phrase misandry, these conversations that make it seem like it's just interactions on social media where a man is sad and people shut him down and tell him to, you know, like, suck it up. It's
Okay, but actually, you guys need to start doing. Actually, I need y'all all to start doing this right now because we were. I'm sorry, God. We talked about Chelsea Fagan yesterday for like 2 hours on stream yesterday. It was crazy. Hour and a half, whatever it was on stream yesterday. Listen to me when I say this. You need to stop basing everything off online activity. Yes, online is real life, but also like the most lonely, the most angry, the most everything is all here in a very concentrated form. You got to water it down with some water, guys. This is like concentrated, you know, orange juice. You know what I mean? You got to water it down because in real life, in your everyday life, are you having these conversations this way? Are things happening this way? Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to reassess who you are talking to and who is having these problems and how are they realistically, you know what I mean? You got to be Hassan with that Arabic tea. Got to be Hassan, you know what I mean? You got to put some water in it, girl. Put ice cube in it. You know what I mean? Like, you got to do this because, again, like, you know, what's really happening in your real friendships? What's really happening? Why is your friend group struggling to get together to do a potluck? Be honest, because you're not just talking about a figment of your imagination. You're talking about real people with real lives, with real struggles. So when people get online, they go, my friend group just never hosts. I invite all my friends to my birthday, but nobody showed up. You guys need to realize how serious of a topic, like, that's so serious. So you can't just be Chelsea Fagan yelling at all people about how you're all bad friends. No, this is so serious. Why are you friends with people who aren't coming to your birthday party? If they're allegedly your friend, if they're close to you, if you invited them, if they said yes, right? Like, this isn't a joke to me. If I hosted a birthday party and my friend said, yeah, she's coming, and then she didn't show up, I'd be like, were you in the hospital? Because that would be the only reason a friend of mine would not come to my birthday party. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you have the relationship with these people you think you have? Because the onus also has to be, the responsibility has to be partially you. Are you actually sure that you're friends with these people? Are you sure you're connecting with these people? You know, be honest, because sometimes I have a feeling that the world isn't like, you know what I mean? Okay.
like, no, these guys have the opportunity to learn about all of the work that feminists are doing, have been doing to address these problems for men. Like that's a lot of what feminism does. Specifically, that's what Black feminism does. And so it's just, to get back to
Especially bell
everything that we
hooks.
were. Yes. Oh yeah.
Especially bell hooks.
Yep.
Okay, bell hooks mentioned.
And one thing
the issue
about I was just gonna say that one thing about like she gets a lot of hate from men. Oddly enough,
Bell hooks?
Oddly enough, no, exactly, predictably enough.
yes,
She's the
That's not
nicest.
true. That is
She's the nicest feminist
Exactly.
of note.
exactly.
She's
But-
nice as fuck the black man.
Exactly.
Just being
But I've
honest.
seen like so much hate. Yo, I've just seen like a lot of hate just in comments on bell hooks. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't make sense because I don't even think they actually take the time to like fully ingest the entire message and just look at something just to respond and be upset about, to paint a picture for what their agenda is, which is appropriately aligned with like Alvin so eloquently stated when he low-key shut us all up for a second. It's just like they have not adjusted well to current day state and time and where and patriarchy having us back against the wall in a sense.
See, okay, let me not get distracted by half of the point that you just made. I feel like what's happening in this conversation, and it's not an unfair thing because sometimes I think a word just gets poisoned by like words are how they're used. I'm very much a descriptivist when it comes to the way language works. So if we're saying that the word misandry has been co-opted in such a way that it's being used as a misogynistic dog whistle, I wouldn't even disagree with that if that's the argument being made here. But I think part of what's happening here is I'm trying to put forward an argument that there are systemic ways in which gender impacts men negatively, and it is enforced by power structures, and it impacts men in ways that are very, very significant. The word that I'm using for that is misandry because it seems like a good analog for that. It's more than just patriarchy, it's specific. Though I understand.
Hold up. Discord said not Discord. YouTube chat says bell hooks the same person who compared black men to animals and said white men are the only real men. Did she say that? I don't know that. I didn't read that.
And why we might go, well, okay, Eddie, you're using the word misandry, but half the time these motherfuckers using the word misandry are.
Quick Google research says absolutely did not say that. So did you read it yourself or did you watch a YouTube video that told you that? Where'd you read that? Which book of hers says that? And not that she can't be wrong, because I also called out her misogyny towards Bill Clinton, towards Monica Lewinsky. So P.S. I do have criticisms for old bell hooks, but not new bell hooks, because old bell hooks was also a product of her environment. She also can suffer from internalized misogyny. She's not perfect. She's a person. But did she say that? Or did somebody on a YouTube video tell you that? I'm not seeing it in a quick Google search, but I'll look into it. It says the AI answer says no, bell hooks did not compare black men to animals and say white men are the only real men. This is a misinterpretation of her work. Instead, she explored how racist and sexist systems have historically dehumanized black men, portraying them as animals or brutes in order to maintain white supremacist control. In her book, Real Cool, Black Men and Masculinity, she critiques how the imperialist, white supremacist, capitalistic patriarchy harms black men and advocates for solutions like self-love, critical consciousness, and embracing feminist and anti-patriarchal values. That's the AI response that comes up naturally in my Google search right here, guys. Okay. So again, I feel like, I don't know if you saw that in a YouTube video or you thought that was true, but unless you've read it from her books yourself, you might want to be cautious. I get it. Sometimes I watch a video and I'm like, oh, fuck that person. But obviously we have to pay attention to the nuance in the topic. So I don't know if you're like a hater, bro, but just think about it from that perspective. And again, bell hooks is not, none of these people are perfect. All of us are imperfect, period. But if you're going to criticize someone, make sure you know their work and understand their work before you do it, to some extent, at least a little bit, right?
Trying to act like, oh, feminism is the problem, or any of the points that you made, Finn. So
Yeah, that was beautifully stated, but I don't think misandry is the word for what we're describing. That's 1000% correct, but I don't think misandry is the right word for that, because just at the end of the day, just the bare bones description of it is the dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against men. Now that could be like on an individual level and a systematic level, but as far as systematic, there are certain instances, but niggas ain't got like a whole bunch of barriers, societal barriers in their way just because they're men. Like that's
name a societal systematic misandrist policy or misandrist something that says because men are men, right?
Being dead is a barrier. What have I just spent the last 30?
Being dead is a barrier. Are women killing men en masse? Right? Like, men are the primary murderers in the world, right? Are women killing? What is?
My brother, pause. My brother, pause. My brother.
I thought you weren't using murder. I thought you weren't using murder as an example, motherfucker. I just told you that. I just told you about that one.
That's not what I was saying.
I just told you. Look at you switching it up.
Like, you just, right.
No,
I'm saying
I can't give
It's 2024. It's 2024.
I can't give examples.
Ain't a motherfucker that like a nigga. What nobody talk about? Nobody dying. Nigga.
So I
What
don't
the
know.
fuck you?
I'm going to throw a wrench in the trans community. There is a phrase, transandrophobia, which is describing the ways
I'm sorry.
that...
One more time for me, brother.
Oh, transandrophobia?
Transandrophobia.
Yeah. So it's describing, and I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for like giving cis people this word, but you know it's out there. It's out there. But it's describing it's similar to trans misogyny, describing the sort of unique hatred of masculinity that is expressed by trans masculine people. The ways that the, for lack of a better description, misogyny that we experience through transphobia of being sort of like viewed as women by transphobic people. Intersects with our transness and our expressions of masculinity to make us dangerous, to make us, easier to erase, to sort of neglect the psychological and like the mental health needs, the emotional needs of transgender men very often in similar ways to the way that cisgender men experience that kind of erasure and I guess neglect for lack of a better word. And I wonder, and this is just me musing. So nobody come at me. Whoa, Jesus! Nobody come at me for this one.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, I like maybe androphobia. Maybe there's another word we could use because it's just recognizing the way that misandry has been completely it's been appropriated by some pretty.
I'm open to that argument for sure. Yeah, I'm very open to that one. And androphobia, because I was going to ask because I didn't want to reduce it down too much to your trans identity, but it's like it seems like if like maleness or manness or masculinity is like a part of your identity that is like contended about by society, then I feel like that's a very unique perspective where you can go, okay, this person didn't have an issue with me when they saw me this way. They have an issue with me when they see me this way or in XYZ context. What is the thing that is changing? And when the thing that is changing is being a man or not being perceived as a man, if I'm using the correct phrasing, that seems like it's a unique perspective to talk about, let's say, androphobia.
I think that coming at it from the perspective of someone who spent so long like living presenting as female, that contempt towards men, so much of it is based in fear, and so much of that fear is based in experience, right? So it's going back to the fact that men are, to bring up murder again, and this time it's me doing it, but if men are more likely to be murdered, men are more likely to be victims of violent crime, men are also vastly more likely to, of course, be the perpetrators of violent crime as well.
Thanks.
Right? So when I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alvin, but when he says that like, no, we need to emphasize that this is a male problem, it's because men are their own worst enemy, the same way that men, when it comes to violence, are the worst enemy of people of other genders as well. Right. So it's when we use the phrase misandry, it makes it sound like members of other genders need to step up and recognize the ways that men are disadvantaged, when really it's like, no, men are hurting and men are hurting men. And are there ways that people of other genders, particularly women, reinforce this? Absolutely. Again,
definitely.
Bell Hooks talks pretty extensively about this. She talks quite a bit about the ways that that mothers in particular kind of reinforce harmful patriarchal structures in their sons.
Look, only under patriarchy can mothers be abandoned by their partners to be then single mothers and then get blamed for how their sons turn out. Because they stayed to raise them. Okay?
But ultimately, who's swinging their fist, right? Who's actually committing the violence? And that's kind of what men need to acknowledge if they're going to make a change on that front.
Who controls the media messages? You know what I'm saying? Who controls the media messages? Who controls the government? Like, women are 51% of the population. They're not 51% of any government seat in any state, in any country. Who controls everything? Like, who's perpetuating that?
I don't think that control question is, one, I don't think it's necessarily one-to-one, and two, this goes back to a conversation that says something like...
It's not one-to-one, you're right. It's substantially more outsized in favor of men than one-to-one.
What I mean is, I don't think that it's 100% men in control of everything. That's what I mean. There's like some significant amount of influence coming from people that aren't men, specifically in media, much less so in government. But in media, I would say that's not like 0 100. But
I would disagree.
The other thing,
I would say that's probably where your argument is the weakest in stuff like media and fashion. Like if you look at like...
Oh, Oh, wait, Chatter, let me engage with you in super good faith, right? About bell hooks. She said that black men can only express ourselves via different acts of violence, physical and sexual, against women. You said it was, you thought it was her book, her 1990 book, Yearning Gender, Race, Gender, and Cultural Politics. I saw her comments in an article, thought it was an article, but it was a book. Oh, it was a book. Okay, pause. If she's saying what I think she was saying, then she isn't saying that black men can only and ought to. She's saying because of white supremacy and the way that it exists under patriarchy and through misogynistic lenses, black men have nothing left to feel like men except for violence. And that is why black men through white supremacy are always made to be violent. Little black boys, you know this, are treated as grown men, assumed to be violent. And that's because of white supremacy. So if you're a black kid growing up and you're a black boy and you want to be a man and you want to be patriarchally, brownie pointed, right? And you want to be given credit, then the only way to engage in the patriarchy that makes sense will come out in the ways that, well, it's often stereotyped about black boys, right? So I think that's what she's saying. She's saying they're victims of the system that doesn't even give them the option to be soft, to be poetry, to be artists, to be feminine, to be pretty, to be peaceful, to be vegans, to be artists, to, you know what I mean, in a soft way, right? I think that's what she's saying from my understanding, right? Chat says, Brittany, this ties into FD's video yesterday about black men feeling safe around women, kind of. Ooh, we watched FD Signifier cover Sinners yesterday for the member stream. Yeah. Let's see. Chat says, facts, product of black single mother and the way the community speaks of black men raised that way is infuriating. Any negative action of a black man is regulated to must have been raised by the ma. Yeah, exactly, 100%. And then Chet says, except she was talking about the Central Park Five and she was wrong. I don't know. I'd have to look at the context. So we know the Central Park Five were falsely accused, right? We know that. And we know that old bell hooks had problems in her writing that eventually got updated, as far as I know. Maybe she kept certain things, intact in a particular way. I don't know. I'll look into it because I am curious now. But we know the Central Park Five, right? They were found not guilty, right? They were falsely, that's the group that Trump went after so hard, right? But I would say that even in her book about love, we found internalized misogyny in there that needed to be deconstructed. Again, she's not a perfect person. I want to know what she would have said in the future. Again, all philosophers are subjected to being raised in white supremacy and under patriarchy. So all these men we watch, if you read Marcus Aurelius, you can see the issues, right? He talks about having slaves. He talks about women. He talks about, you can read a philosopher, take the good and get out of the bad, leave the bad. We're not talking about bell hooks like she should be pedestaled. We're talking about bell hooks as a contributor to ideas in the world that were helpful. The same way you would think about Marcus Aurelius or anybody else. Do not take away her credibility because she was also flawed. But don't also sit here and pretend like she was perfect either. Right? Something like that. Okay? So that's why we have to deconstruct. That's why we have to work on it. But I'll keep looking into it. My Discord, I'm sure, will end up focusing on this and trying to figure it out as well, because we're all a bunch of autists who want to, figure this out because we want to get down to it. But okay, I'll check it out. I don't know if you've read that book. Did you get a chance to read it yourself, or I don't know if you had a chance to read it yourself, but I think that might help, right? That might be important. Okay.
If you look at the movers and shakers of you can trace so much stuff back to Sinclair and News Corp, and it's the web is very small, and it's
okay. And this is going to be all right. I'll for the purposes of this conversation, let me concede that. Let's say it's all men. My issue here is a point that's been made about white supremacy, which is that you don't need white politicians to enact white supremacy. You can have white supremacy in a nation that's run entirely by black people, or people who are non-white. So when it comes to the conversation around androphobia, the fact that powerful men have no issue with narratives that are harmful to men in general or less powerful men is not an argument against the existence of anti-male sentiments, androphobia, et cetera, et cetera. Like the Murdochs of the world not giving a fuck whether or not black men are in prison or poor men can't get like jobs that pay above minimum wage because they're not going in university and don't have pathways to alternative vocational skills. That's not evidence of anything other than that powerful people don't give a fuck about powerless people, which is true. So like back to the conversation about what are men going to do about it. If we want to say, yeah, look, androphobia, a lot of it is generated, safeguarded, and enacted by other men, strong agree. Still an issue.
I don't think anyone's saying it's not. You know what I mean? But I mean, when
I think we're inadvertently are. I think that's,
I mean, I don't want to speak for nobody, but I think, with what you just said, I think we're kind of all on the same page. I saw Alvin give the.
I wonder where he is, the bottom right guy. I wonder where he is on his journey. He seems the youngest. I could be wrong. He also seems the least. Forgive me, I'm going to say it this way because I think he seems the least or the least elder, like the least, he seems young. And so I wonder if he's just, feeling these out for the first time or thinking about it for the first time. He feels like he's trying. So I want to give him props for that because that's so important. But it does feel like the other people on the panel are a little bit more well-read, a little bit more understanding, especially the top left guy, this guy. I think you guys can see my mouse, right? I feel like he feels like the most, I feel like he's getting it the most, I think.
Like, but my whole thing is like, we've been saying that, like, this is a problem that men have got to tackle first and foremost before we expect anybody else to do something about it. And then, we can, get into like the male loneliness thing, because I think this is a good segue, is if guys are so lonely, and anytime like a dude, like, not anytime, but a lot of times when guys do speak out, or they don't even feel.
And yeah, great point. I think it's easier to explain these things if one person, quote, doesn't get it. He, being what he is helping the conversation happen in the first place, because you do need somebody. The best conversations do happen when people are really, really going at it. That's why we have the joke, what's a conversation between two fives? Silence. Because if you've introspected and extrospected into fiveness, what else is there to talk about? All you're doing is living in the most present and experiencing. Two is where you have the discussion. So you kind of need somebody who is oppositional to you, because, it really helps because they ask the questions,
comfortable with speaking out, expressing how they feel, like the trouble that they're going through. They feel lonely, or because they don't want to reach out to friends, or they don't want to try to make new friends because they'll feel like a bitch. You know what I'm saying? That's difficult because like guys have got to give other space.
Oh, his name is Eddie. And yeah, he is a work in progress. Eddie. Okay.
Guys to be emotional and vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got to go full 100 with it,
Oh, Discord said it's funny because he's usually the most progressive one in the podcast. So him being off base like this is interesting. Interesting. Well, maybe are we missing something he's trying to express? Is he trying to get something deeper that he can't quite articulate in this moment because of the construct around the conversation? I wonder if there's something in his head he's been really like sitting on. It feels like he's really been thinking about something that he's trying to get out, but in the construct of the conversation, it's maybe difficult to explain.
You know what I mean? Because but at the same time, it's like, bro, like we need to give each other that space.
Yeah.
To be vulnerable, to be human beings first, and then once we actually have the space to be human with one another, we can actually be human to everybody fucking else, instead of just being quote unquote men, which is why that wraps up the whole like men being the danger, and then just the word men being thrown upon, packaged in that danger that guys represent, not only to themselves but to everybody else, because we're like, we don't treat each other like fucking humans.
No. Yeah. I think my only last bit.
Well, I would say we do treat each other like humans. It's just undignified. We don't treat people with dignity.
Would just be, I agree, it's on men. Men should be doing this thing. All of this stuff that I'm categorizing as misandry is coming from guys. Only thing I would say is for people of other genders, it's like, I say it's maybe 20%, maybe 25% of the issue. Is just like, don't stand in the way. And to your point, Finn, maybe that's not really happening that much outside of the internet, but I do see it a fair bit. I do see, like we just talked about something on the live where I very much think that a woman was looking down on male expression, like a male expression of intimacy, of softness, of vulnerability. And I would say, look,
it is. You know what I thought this conversation was going to be, and I kind of hoped it had been, but that's okay. Maybe he's about to talk about it more now. Women need to deconstruct patriarchy. We are suffering from misogynistic beliefs, right? We are suffering. Okay, Drew Afawalo has a book called Loud, and she talks about her own internalized misogyny and pick-meism. pick-meism in a philosophical sense, like not in just some sort of insult you throw at each other, is a serious condition of internalized misogyny. It's really dangerous to you and others. So we need to deconstruct these things. If you're raised as a woman, if you are a woman, if you're femme or trans or whatever you are, like we need to, all of us, regardless of our situation, understand the world we're born into and then move from there, because we're so conditioned. It's really like, you ever pick up a habit and you're like, fuck, I wish I would stop doing this, but I can't knock myself out of the habit. We do that with the way we think. Okay, we do that with the way we think about things. Like we're always on defense. A man expresses vulnerability and we're like, fuck your feelings. You know, I've seen people do that. I'm like, hey, I know you're hurting because men suck right now, but this one man is talking to you and he's expressing hurt. You need to meet this one man where he is. And remember, he doesn't represent all men, right? And yet I can understand that sometimes men, because I've worked with a lot of male customers, clients for my, like my calls, my Patreon calls I used to do. I worked with a lot of men, and I did sometimes get a male caller that was insufferable. I mean, victim, never took a word of advice, just wanted to complain to me, did absolutely no growth in 6-7 years. 100% I've had those experiences with men, okay? They're so frustrating. They're so obnoxiously frustrating, right? I hear you. Minus those men. There are people who happen to be men who are going through it and need community. They need to be heard. And I think those men will also be aware of your feelings as well. If you're dealing with a person who happens to be a man and he is just not interested in your feelings and he is always like arguing with you, he's always combating, he's always fighting with you, sure, then that's going to be very frustrating. But just a reminder that every single one of these men on this panel have every right to feel vulnerable with people that are trusted and should be heard and should be taken care of. And assuming they reciprocate, then we're good. The issue is the lack of reciprocation. The issue is like, hey, I'm here showing up for you and you're not showing up for me. And it's not about like, it's not transactional. It's out of ethics, values. It has to be a value of yours to show up, not a part of the transaction. Okay, we have transactions in society because we're strangers and we have to make it that way. But out of the kindness of our heart to the people that we love, we will see your problems and meet you where you are. And yes, sometimes that looks like open with boundaries. Sometimes you have a man in your life, like I'm working on this message right now. I'm going to send to one of the boys in my life, okay? I can't decide if I'm going to word it like you are too old to not seek out the care that you need and the therapy that you deserve to heal the childhood wounds that were, you know, pushed on you. And also you need to ask for forgiveness for the wounds you caused to others. And you also are too old to not do this, you know, get it together, bitch. You know, just kidding. No, bitch. Don't be weird. I'm going to fix my language. Okay. But like, you know, I'm thinking about how to word it to somebody in my life that I love you. You deserve to go to therapy and you have to do the work to apologize to the people that you hurt, because you hurt some people pretty badly. But you also, I know, were deeply wounded as a child and you need to go heal that little boy's wounds. You need to go to like real therapy. Okay. And so, you know, I've been really working on it. Like, how do I convey to the people in my life, like, you deserve care and love? And because all of us deserve care and love, and we've hurt people. We all deserve care and love, and yes, when you go for that accountability, it does not mean you will have the life you had before accountability. It means you'll have a life that reflects the accountability. You know?
She the primary cause of this issue? No. Do I have more power to help men than she does to harm men? Yeah. Does she do wrong? Also, yes.
And also,
I think people.
No,
Sorry, I'll go ahead. I was just going to say, I think people of all genders do reinforce these systems, right? Like the systems may be implemented by the most powerful group, which is generally speaking men, typically white men in particular, but everybody reinforces the status quo. Everyone is part of it. Everybody is, if you're, I mean, the way that I've kind of put it before is when the tide of society is moving in a certain direction, if you are not swimming against the current, you're moving with it. So if you're not doing the work, you're part of the problem, right?
Yeah, and I think that what this kind of showcases is one, if you want to hear Eddie talk about other people's secrets, you know, make sure that you're signed up for the Patreon. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. But all of this patriarchy stuff, you know, it's a very fragile system. I think that people are having a problem dealing with the fact that it is as fragile as it is. It's kind of a house of cards. And speaking of fucking cards,
right, Alvin Underwood. With the House of Cards reference, we see you.
Let's
See you.
fucking go.
He about to be president
Saucy.
soon. He looking for his Claire. Oh yeah. So speaking of card games and that, some of y'all already know about this because we've been talking about it the last like week
What
or
is
so.
this? This is an
but
ad?
We've just created a card game for the podcast that captures kind of some
Oh my God, they made a card
of
game?
the energy that we have on this podcast. You know, red flags, who's waving them, etc., etc. It's a red flag card game. So the premise of this is any conversation game you've ever played. If you want to have conversations kind of like what we do on this podcast with your homies, homegirls, whatever, dinner party, you can ask yourself these
Oh
questions.
my God, are they about to play the game at the
So
end?
we're just gonna play like
The timestamp says it's a red flag game. Okay, I guess they're done with the conversation.
a quick round of it while we're on the pod. Give you an idea of it. We'll drop the link in the
What?
description for those of you who are interested in,
Let's see what they think a red flag is.
grabbing a.
By the way, do you guys think red flags are universal or not? Because I think red flags are subjective and prescriptive if you want to make them prescriptive. So, like, what I think is a red flag, you might not think is a red flag, but, you know, I'm not always prescribing that you have to agree, but
Pack?
A deck, if you will.
Yeah, the deck. Yeah, decks. That's what I was like. What the fuck do you call a thing of cards? A deck of cards. Yeah, there we go.
The thing of cards, just like
Yeah, deck of cards.
You know, so if you want to grab yourself a thing real quick,
just grab a thing real quick. Just just do it.
Want to
Just make it
grab a
happen.
thing of these.
That's the word, man. That's the word. So, is it a red flag if they sell drugs?
is it a red flag if they sell drugs? Great question. No, but I'm going to need more information. What do you think? No, but I'm definitely going to need more information. Like, do you own a dispensary? Do you own a legal business? Are you selling to your friends? Which drugs? To who? Okay? Like, it's very dependent. Listen, I bought drugs from some people in my life, you know, illegal and legal. And yeah, like what do we talk about? I'm going to need context.
Oh, absolutely
think?
not.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
What they selling and what kind of money they moving?
That's what I'm saying. Like you dating Griselda like it's just nothing. I feel like that's incompatible with a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, you can ask all her
let's-
ex-husbands. I feel like that was a red flag.
What kind of drugs and to whom? Like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
there's
client
a
too.
lot of variables.
I'm still
Like if she
saying
sells a
that.
little bit of weed, fine. But
I'm
if
still
she's
saying
like a
that.
cartel member,
I
you
don't
don't
know. If
mind.
she's selling a little bit of weed. I ain't never
Even
dated
that
girl-
you think might be an issue?
I ain't never dated no girl that sold weed.
I think even that could be a red flag because it's not.
To be honest, the only thing I would be afraid of is like, okay, do you know in California, this is crazy because you just think of California as the weed state. Do you know my dispensaries were getting raided by the feds constantly? Legal dispensaries, because it's still federally illegal, would raid my dispensaries. And I don't know what made the difference between a nice dispensary that just never got raided and one that got like kind of put up. I don't know why they were getting raided, but I would go to the same weed place for like months. And then one day I would show up and there'd be a sign on the door. And I'm like, what the fuck? And everyone's like, got raided. Or one time my brother was picking up weed from a dispensary and it was getting raided. And he turned around and walked away. He's like, no. Because the police can come in and take all their cash. So like what then I've been in dispensaries that are so fucking nice and established that I couldn't even imagine them getting raided, but it happens. And then you go to some places and the weed shop has been up for 20 years, no one's ever bothered it. It's like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? I don't know if there was some shady stuff happening, but even when you have I think I would just want somebody who would be the most responsible drug dealer in the world. You have to be responsible. But if you're not responsible, like, look, do not give me a reason to visit you in prison unless it's for a very good reason. And there's barely any reasons to ever go to prison. So you better, you know what I'm saying? Do not make me, okay? Do not put me in this position.
And not necessarily like you're a bad person, but just there's a different element in your life that maybe I don't want to be a part of.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm sorry, Button. I didn't realize that you didn't want to fuck with me like that.
You sell drugs?
No, I thought you were saying that like.
You sell Plan Bs.
I would goddamn accidentally telling himself on the podcast. What's going
Of course, I
on?
don't sell. Of course, I don't sell drugs. But I'm just saying. I thought you were saying that if I was willing to date somebody that sold drugs, that you didn't want me to be a part of your life. Is how I interpreted that. So
Oh, that's you added some extra steps in there.
I did.
Yeah.
I 100% did.
I feel like I'm not even considering weed a drug because like for me if like I meet someone
When you
and,
sell it,
know-
it is.
Well, but like I live in Canada. If
That's that white supremacy over there. That's that white privilege over there.
I'm on a date,
It's not a
and,
drug when you
know,
use
like,
it, but if you're selling weed, that's a
Selling
drug.
it, baby. You
But it's like- but-
can't doing that rhyme, baby.
So it's similar. It's similar than it like if I meet someone and they're like, oh yeah, like I sell weed. Up here, that's like saying I work at a pharmacy. Like it's just you work at the dispensary, like you
That's a
go in,
different
it's like a tea shop. They
different
get
thing.
like the tins out. You get to smell more.
Woo woo. Red Song says member for 2 months, but it feels longer. I hope that's good. Is that good or bad that it feels longer? Thank you for being here. I appreciate it so much.
Like it's a
Yeah.
whole.
But
So like
if
I don't
you're
even
street
really
pharmacist,
consider weed
though.
a drug.
Exactly.
Or if you
know,
sell, or if you
street-
sell like
if you-
fucking crack cocaine, I do think that's different than even like a person that's like, oh, I grow some cool mushrooms. You want to try some? Like, I think that's a little bit different than.
Well, the only reason cocaine might be different is because of the cartels mixed up in the cocaine industry and the way that it comes through. But I think drugs are neutral. I think all drugs should be legalized. I also think a lot of the reason these drugs get so fucked up is because they are illegal and people are getting fucked over for it. Like, people should not be dying because of fucking fentanyl and coke. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing unethical about doing coke. You know, on Selling Sunset, one of the girls tried to shame the other girl for doing cocaine. Oh my God, relax. You never put something up your nose before? I actually really can't think of a time I put something up my nose, but I'm sure there was something, okay? Just relax, you know? This demonization of coke is I'm so overblown. Like, do drugs responsibly / legalize shit / stop putting people in prison for drugs / fuck these, like, cartels.
It depends all on who and where. Because if you got people coming by the crib,
Yeah, that's a little.
I asked my brother one time, I was like, should I try coke? Because, you know, he used to have a really good coke supply. And I was like, should I try coke? And he's like, with peace and love, you do not need coke. And I was like, with peace and love? I'm going to take that as a compliment.
You know, don't shit we eat at. You know what I'm saying? First of all,
You gotta have a stash
like,
house.
but
that's what I'm.
But,
my
like, yo,
house.
I ain't gonna lie though, like, you know what? I think I'm a little bit biased because I would date a girl that sold shrooms sooner than I would date a girl that sold weed. Because I feel like
Yes.
shrooms is like a higher clientele. It's like a
I
higher
agree.
end.
Wow.
It's earthier.
Everybody
Because
wants weed.
Exactly. Weed is kind of like
Everybody.
that's everybody. And you know, have you ever met everybody? That's like it's a lot of terrible people within that category.
Absolutely.
Whereas mushroom people is kind of
Have you ever met everybody?
like they're going to be more earthy. They don't wear shoes as much. A person who doesn't wear shoes is less of a
man.
threat, just tactically speaking. So
Josh
I'm a little bit less afraid.
Josh is like, if they smoke crack, like that's a problem. But if they sell pure cocaine, like zero issue. That's fine. That's the investment bankers at that point.
Wait, isn't crack cocaine just like, isn't that just a racist stigma white people created to make black people incarcerated at higher rates? Isn't crack cocaine just different because of the way you consume it? Am I stupid? Isn't there no difference between cocaine and crack cocaine? Right? I know what I'm talking about, right? Isn't crack, it's just cooked, but it's still coke. You know what I mean? Wait. Isn't crack cocaine the form you do it in, but it's also stigmatized in the black community? Like, what are we doing?
Just
Exactly, yeah.
It's like not a problem.
Well, I guess there's some racial implications to that.
Yeah, that's
But
what I'm saying. Like,
mushrooms,
the
Oh,
The
okay,
CEOs
okay. He just mentioned it.
can
Okay.
come by the crib. The CEOs can come by the crib. You know, that's fine.
The
That's cool.
vitamin.
no,
But
it's like
because
ketamine versus mushrooms. Like,
Yeah.
Look, man, ketamine.
Damn.
I'm telling you, man, ketamine's an RC drug, man.
Damn.
man, okay.
Theater squad.
You really a kingpin, man. I really off camera. I really know what's up.
No, you know what? There was this one girl in
Okay, so crack is a variation of coke, but it might not be the best. Listen, people should get the best and cleanest drugs, period. Okay, we should just be getting people the best, cleanest, and safe drug use. Okay, whatever. I don't want anything bad. Okay, but listen, as a girly who's done DMT and as a girly who might have made the soup herself, let me tell you, it's all chemicals, girl. You are just smoking chemicals. I'm pretty sure half my brain damage from COVID might have just been that. Worth it though. The world was bright and beautiful for a second. Okay, and let me just tell you, the smells that soup made, okay? The smells that soup made were crazy. Okay?
I used to pick up a little dime sack from her every now and then. She was cool.
I didn't do it alone. I had somebody help me because they knew what they were doing. I was just the assistant. I was the assistant
I had a loft
of making the soup in the kitchen because we're chefs.
downtown. Like, she was cute. Like, you know, back. Yeah, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
But it would not be like the greenest flag. It would not be a necessary. I would consider that a green flag. That's for damn sure.
Fair enough.
No, ironically, but no, a lot of that is because what you just said was I would have sex with somebody who's attractive, but dating this person who happens to have a bunch of clientele coming by the house all the time, that just seems like a dangerous and bad, and not like one, dangerous, but two, maybe not conducive to a healthy relationship either. Like, I just feel like any person who does business out of their home could be working at a dispensary is totally different than.
I mean,
fucking
like,
selling weed.
you gotta reel that one back.
That's what I'm saying. He didn't say illegal business. He didn't
That's true too. Chad said coke will literally create holes in your sinuses and give you a higher risk of heart attack. Yeah, guys, you probably shouldn't do drugs. Even weed. Guys, I love weed, but weed is not great for you. Long-term memory loss is absolutely part of the weed experience. Like, I don't know what to tell you, right? Also, fun fact, one of my brothers, I saw him and I was like, hey, bro, how you doing? Did you get in a couple of fights? Your nose looks fucked up. He goes, nah, dude, it's the coke. I was like, yeah, you should probably stop doing that. Anyways, listen, we're middle class, okay? Like, we're middle class. You guys know the rule. Middle class people are allowed to do coke, you know? That's classism for you, baby. It's white privilege right there for you, okay? Listen, do drugs at your own risk. Have babies at your own risk. Girl, exist at your own risk.
Give any qualifiers.
Just says
He didn't say
business.
illegal business.
If she makes soul food plates from out of her apartment, I feel like that's a bit of a red flag too.
She do hair out of
If
her
I'm being
apartment.
honest.
Like that's an issue. Like that's a fuck no.
Well, no, you know what? I think
You got to reel that one back,
there,
bro.
there might be some androphobia.
She do
in what I'm
taxes
saying.
outside of her. She do taxes out of her apartment, bro.
Dangerous. Yeah. Dangerous. Yeah. Who's taxes? What tax bracket?
Please,
Why does she have
what
all?
if
please use a different word. I'm pretty sure you didn't use that right.
what if she
I think I
sells
used it
drugs
right.
out of her apartment, but she
Yeah.
like ships them, so she just mails them.
Ooh,
Oh, that's different.
Oh, that's a
that's risky. Guys, can't believe how many people I know who put drugs in the mail. Girls, listen, I'm a rule breaker, but I would never. I'm not going to prison because I put something in an envelope. You know what I mean? I cannot believe the amount of people I know who put drugs in a federal envelope and put it and give it to the post office.
That's
federal
actually
crime. Now you really getting everybody fucked up.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
That's different. Oh, that's fine. I just don't-
Okay, I'm stupid. I'm sorry.
He
You're right.
basically-
That's
he
not
basically
wrong.
just said- Just say what you want to say, Eddie. This motherfucker is really
Okay.
just saying he don't want other motherfuckers. He don't want other men around his girl. Is what he's saying. He just
And yes. First of all, yes, but also around me. That's like if they know where the fucking stash spot is and it's my spot or where we live together or where she lives together, that's a literal danger of robberies, thefts, and murders. That's what happens all the time to people who steal drugs. They get robbed.
That's why
Have we gotten into? Eddie was arguing misandry is real because he like feels it every day of his life. Is basically what
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Ben, don't do this.
you basically just said it.
Don't do this, man. I done invited you on the podcast like 3 times. Come on, man. Don't turn against me.
That means I've gotten
Same
comfortable.
team.
I know.
Yeah. No.
Introducing the fourth host of Waving the Red Flag.
Yeah. There we go. Permanent fixture.
I know.
New king, light skin. Okay.
Okay, new red flag.
Oh shit. I feel you on that though. I feel you on that.
Yeah.
My reservations are pretty similar. Because I ain't trying to be around nowhere where it could potentially just be going the fuck down, especially not my girl.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, we can hang out, we can kick
way
it.
to get
I
shot
mean,
in your
you know,
sleep.
I'll be around niggas that sell drugs,
Yeah.
you know.
I don't want to be in danger any more than I need to be. I'm already in danger enough.
Not all the time, but you know, come on,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
But you don't live
Ain't
with
nothing
them.
new.
You're not seeing them regularly. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, not at
ain't
my
with them
big
all the
age.
time,
You know what I'm saying?
And are you around them while they're doing the drug sale? I mean, maybe you
Couple
are, but
times,
like I would say,
you know, yeah.
okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, I would.
Again,
I
not at
would
my
make
big
that person.
age, but I've done
Yeah.
it. You know what I'm saying? You know.
There you go. Not at my big age. We don't do
You
that
know,
shit no
There you
more.
go.
I'm not the same person. I'm not the same.
You know what? If the Discord said this game would be fun at the Discord, it would be great as a Discord event or even like between couples. My partner and I could talk about this for hours. Like after stream today, I'm definitely going to be like, could I sell drugs? Like, what do you think? Would you date me if I was selling drugs when you met me? Like, you know, it's a good conversation starter for sure, because it's just like, it forces you to really think about what you think about things. Like, I wanted to see another one. I want them to pull another card.
The person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago,
No,
15
not even
years ago.
yesterday.
5 minutes ago. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I can't be held
Whole
responsible
new-
for that.
I can
for those
vouch for a
decisions.
whole new nigga right there.
100%.
Well,
Fan put out a book with like bookmarks and shit in it. I was on Amazon right now. You know, I'm like, I got to step my game up. I bought a Kimberly Crenshaw book like 2 seconds ago. You know,
Kimberly Crenshaw. These boys are just name dropping black thinkers left and right, black women left and right. Kimberly. Who else did they say? Bell Hooks, Angela Davis. They're just out here. Okay, flex. This is okay. I'm not gonna lie. As a girly, boys naming these names, I'm like, I'm listening. That's cute. Okay, that's kind of cute. Chad said, who is that? Kimberly Crenshaw is the professor who created the theory around intersectionality. That's cute. They're really out here just like,
Right, matter of fact,
Add to cart.
hold.
Now we pulling books out.
I know. This,
We're doing the book tour.
There
You know,
what we got.
that's the next
You know,
episode of book club.
He gonna read a passage.
You know, I too,
You know what a
I
cage
too
bird
would like
sings.
to bring a topic that just so happened to, cross my mind. You know,
About to tell
people,
us.
People just don't live in the now, and that's why. Well,
Tell
actually,
us.
I can bring that one out next. But people just ain't been living in the now. You know what I'm saying? So that's why. You know
Oh,
what I'm saying?
Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle. Okay, I've yet to read Eckhart Tolle because I'm cynical around his work, but I would like to read it just to know so I can have the conversation with people about it. But Eckhart Tolle just gives the secret, and I hate the secret. But maybe I'm wrong for thinking that. Everyone always asks me, Brittany, what do you think about Eckhart Tolle? I don't know.
Totally is always.
They got to know about the power of it.
But let me tell you this. I strongly believe you should read all books, even bad books, especially banned books. Okay, you should read all books, even bad books, especially banned books. Read every book so you know what everybody is, what's going on.
You know what I'm saying? They don't understand the power of the now, man. That's
Oh
why
my
we have a
God.
lot of this suffering. And a lot of you brothers need to read this good old book. Just a lot of people need to read this good old book and get in tune with spirituality. You know what I'm saying? Just something I just want to, pull on screen too. You know what I mean?
It just happened to be lying around, so you
It's
might
like
as
right
well,
there, you know?
And then this motherfucker Eddie just pulls out a Quran, just like, and now while we're trying to get right spiritually.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
You know
The
what?
final call on the bean pie. Let's get it popping.
Right. Last call for bean pies.
Speaking of last call, we had time, ain't we?
Yeah, we sure are.
Oh, okay.
10-4, man. Damn it, we gotta
Too
get
bad
the
we couldn't
fucking.
do the loneliness epidemic.
We gotta get.
Hey,
we
we're
gotta
gonna have
get
another
fan
episode on that.
We gotta get fan for loneliness.
Would've-
epidemic, man.
Is that it?
That's the one I took notes on.
Oh,
That's
damn.
one I
Okay,
took notes
we're
on.
gonna schedule you in for another one.
Don't life just do you like that? I tell you.
Trust me.
See, that's what I'm saying. Misandry, man. It's misandry, bro. That's what's happening to you.
Fan, I also had notes on loneliness.
Wait, I want to
Man,
see
it's
something.
misandry, bro. That's what's happening.
Life just do you like that? I tell you.
Trust me.
See, that's what I'm saying. Misandry, man. It's misandry, bro. That's what's happening to you.
Fan, I also had notes on loneliness. I have
Nobody.
I have fucking
Damn.
studies pulled up. I'm doing Google Scholar lit reviews and shit, bro.
Were you looking at? I gotta ask. 2023 associations between social media use and loneliness and cross national population. Do motives for social media use matter?
Oh my
I was-
God.
That was
I
interesting.
was saying I was not looking at that.
Okay.
I was.
and again, I'm gonna close it out. But I was effectively looking at meta-analysis on tactics for public health communications
Hey, at least they're looking stuff up.
because I think that is a masterclass in how you latch on to something that's in the zeitgeist of public consciousness.
That was a crazy
It's a
zoom in, bro.
masterclass
Look at, I'm sorry.
in how you latch on to something
You can't tell, but his arm is shaking because he's shuffling the cards, but it looks crazy from this angle. I'm blocking it a little bit with my camera, but it looks
that's in
crazy.
the zeitgeist of public consciousness or public health initiative. I got takes on that one.
Bet that. So you know what? I was actually looking at my thoughts for that topic.
And on that note, if you are an individual that is talking to somebody that is using misandry as an equal and opposite response to women gaining more rights, autonomy, power in societal structures, you may be seeing a red flag. But if you're a person that thinks that the patriarchy doesn't impact men at all and doesn't have any negative impact to men whatsoever, despite the fact that the onus may be on them, you may be waving a red flag. This has been Waving the Red podcast. Make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button.
Okay. I liked it. I'm glad I waited to watch the full thing with you guys. That was really cute, and it forced us to have some really great convos. I'm going to go ahead and link it in the chat. The reason I know about them is I know FD did a collaboration with them, and I saw they had done collaborations with other people too. So I'm glad that we talked about it. I think that's important. Does anyone have any closing thoughts? Because what I'm going to do now is I am going to leave you. This is the end of the stream. I'm going to go finish editing the pod, which is going to be beautiful. Okay, let me tell you. But is there anything else? Is there anything we want to cover? The point of this, just from my perspective, the reason I want to cover it is I hope to, as I get better at streaming and as I show up here, I want to be a space where we really are having better conversations about the topics we're going to be having forever. Guys, we're going to be having the same conversations for the next 2,000 years. What is love? Men and women? What is gender? Who are we? What are we doing on the planet? And it's our job to have these conversations in the best way possible to inspire new bubble pops, to inspire new ideas. But the ideas that are new won't be the idea that's new. It's the perspective in which we're engaging with it, right? Chet said unrelated, but kind of related. Have you seen the new Frankenstein? Bro, I just saw it got posted to Netflix. I really want to watch it. I hope it's good. I need you to know the book, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, one of my top 10s. Guys, when I first read Frankenstein, because I had read all the classics, right? When I first read Frankenstein, I thought it was going to be so, it's literally the first part of the book. It's just literally his like notes from his discoveries as a scientist, basically. Like Frankenstein as a concept is so good. And if you want to read like women authors who write horror, like read Frankenstein and read it like from a philosophical perspective and just enjoy the process. But it is so nerdy. You will nerd out. Okay. Love that book. Very much recommend it. I recommend Bram Stoker's Dracula as well, of course. And there are so many good classics out there, but Frankenstein is by far one of my absolute favorites. It's really cool. I don't know. The way she did it is just not what I ever thought, as a younger, I read it when I was much younger, multiple times. I actually used to read it like every year and then I stopped. I used to read a lot of books like every year and then I stopped. But that was one of those books. And now that it's been many years since I've read it, I really should reread it. But every time I read it, it felt like I was, sometimes when I read a book, because I've read so many books, I like when a book feels like an actual person, not a fictional character. And for some reason, Mary Shelley just made that, like the Doctor, so convincingly a person to me that it felt like I was reading a biography, but it wasn't. And that's what was so cool about it. Versus, you read fiction and you're just like, okay, we get it. This is definitely a fictional book. It doesn't give me a real person. That's fun too. I love those books as well. But yeah, I loved it for that reason. So very much recommend. Definitely. Let's see. Okay, did I miss any comments that you guys want me to read? Let's see. Wasn't the author also 19 when she wrote it? I don't know. But, the infamous story around it is that they were in a writing competition with her husband and a friend. And then she wrote Frankenstein in a weekend. I don't know how true that is really, but that's like that's the story or the lore behind Frankenstein, right? Let's see. How do you feel about watching movies the first and then reading the book? It ruins it for me. I'm kind of indifferent at this point. I often feel like books are better than movies. Just generally speaking, as a fan of works of art, I feel like I get the full picture, but I'm also a big fan of the movies. Like I like the Harry Potter books better than the movies, but I like the movies. Funny enough, did not like Tolkien's writing and did not finish it, but I love the Lord of the Rings, and maybe I'll like Lord of the Rings, the books, better. But I personally didn't appreciate Tolkien's writing style at the time I tried to read it, so maybe I should go back. Apparently, The Hobbit is like one of the best books in the world, so I should probably go back and read it or try to. My little nephew's 9; he's reading Lord of the Rings right now. He's already read The Hobbit. Okay, Chad says, what about Twilight? Look. As a girlie who was in high school reading Twilight, yes, before anybody else in her class, and was mocked for it because it was such a big book, I prefer the books over the movies. But I will say this. It's because the movie, do you know what I really liked? Midnight Sun. Was that from Edward's perspective? I ate that shit up, bro. Give me that, Mormon lady. I ate that up. You know what I mean? But the books are better because my brain is better than the movies could ever be. Guys, I don't know what the fuck they were doing in those movies. I do not know what the fuck they were doing with those movies. And I say this as a girly who was absolutely in the theater for all of them. They're really bad. Okay? They're really, 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 really bad. Also, fun fact, I've actually done the tour in Forks, Washington with my bestie because we used to live in Washington together, and we did a road trip and took a ferry all the way to Forks, Washington. Yeah. So, okay. Yes. Okay. Anyways, good times. Good times. You know what the worst book and movie was ever? 50 Shades of Grey. I read 50 Shades of Grey when it came out because my friend was like, my bestie was like, is this what you do on the weekends? First of all, absolutely not. Okay. She's like, is this what you do with your girlfriend? First of all, absolutely not. But also, worst books, worst movies. 50 Shades of Grey so bad. And you know what's fun fact for those girlies who don't know, 50 Shades of Grey is a fan fiction of Twilight. Christian Grey and Anastasia, whatever her name is, was supposed to be Bella and Edward. Yeah, for those of you who don't know. Stephanie Myers was not happy about that, by the way. She was pissed because she was like Mormon and she's like, Edward would never hit Bella. No, girl, he's just 100 years old dating a 15-year-old, but whatever. Edward would never hit Bella. But he would seduce a high schooler. Okay. Crazy. Oh, okay, girls. Okay. Stop talking to me. I got to go edit my pod. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Great convo. Loved it as per usual. Please treat yourselves well and be kind. And I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.